Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin tonight's regular meeting of council, and as we begin tonight, I'd like to formally acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Sooke Nation, and we would like to honor both their governance as well as their long history and connection to the lands and sea that continues to this day. So, Council, with tonight's agenda, I'm looking to move item 11.6, which is the Community Emergency Center for Extreme Weather Conditions, to follow item 9. So it'll come just after the, actually ahead of, it will follow item 8. So not, because there is no item 9, that's just the heading. So it'll be 8 and then it would be 11.6, so immediately following the question and comment period. So with that, I would like for that one change and as well as inclusion of the supplemental agenda. Sorry, there is an item 9? Oh, the public. I just see public input meetings and related reports.
It's item 9.1, the public input, so you
right,
can follow
so,
that one or
but
8.
I meant that there's no 9.0, so this will go, it'll go 8, then 11.6, and then we'll flow into section 9. Okay, good? Okay. So is there a motion to approve that change in the agenda, please? Okay, moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. We have meeting minutes here for adoption, please. There was an addition to the regular council meeting of November 5th, so that's why these are here, and then November 26th. Any questions or corrections, or we move adoption, please?
I'll move adoption.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson, are you?
Page 13.
Okay, so let's have them on the table first. Are you moving adoption? Okay, so let's move by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Speaking to the minutes, Councillor Parkinson.
Page 13, under 7.9 for the crest, it does not have moved by or seconded by.
Okay. Is that on for November the 26th?
Yes, November 5th, it's page 13, or 7 of 7.
Okay, just a sec. Page 5th, 7 of 7. Okay. Okay, so it's just, okay, and sorry, what's missing?
The move by and second by, each one has, for the position CRD, it's moved by Beddoes and Loggins.
Okay.
And then it should be crest is moved by and second by, remember.
Okay, so that one's just missing there. Okay, we'll just need that correction then. Thank you, Councillor. Anything else? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. So item 7.1, tonight we have Sooke Minor Fastball Association, Mr. Justin Wilson presenting. Welcome, please. And if you could please turn on the microphone. And thank you. And you have 5 minutes tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to talk to you.
Yep. Just need you to turn on the mic. That way we can all hear you. Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for allowing me to talk to you on behalf of Sooke Minor Fastball. My name is Justin Wilson, and I am the current president as of this past June. You may be aware that the association has been in operation for many decades. We have a long, proud history of multiple generations of Sooke children and adults playing on the sports fields of Ardmore. Our registration last year was 163 kids. Each kid uses our fields about 24 to 28 times per season. That's about 4,200 times per season a child takes the fields as a Sooke Minor Fastball player. Plus families, friends that attend to watch, as well as numerous visiting players from other associations. So far, it has been fully volunteer organization that's been funded solely by registration fees and generous donations. We are the only association that I am aware of that fully maintains all aspects of our field infrastructure. One recent past president, Dr. Chris Bryant, quietly donated tens of thousands of his own money to keep the association and Art Morris playing field afloat. I provided you with our 2019 budget. I think you all have that in your package. Like previous years, we will run a deficit. This season, unfortunately, we will exhaust what remains of our bank account. As a new president, as of this past June, I'm running up against two challenges. Our cost to operate a youth sport association and pay for basic maintenance exceeds our revenue, and two, our fields are not to the standard of other playing fields that we play on when visiting other associations in Victoria, the remainder of the island, or the Lower Mainland. Our fields require upgrading. The primary deficiency is our infields. They're made of a road-based byproduct from Capital City paving. It's very similar to the material on the Galloping Goose. It packs down like concrete. Our kids get hurt as they slide and hurt as they dive for the ball. I believe Dr. Bryant bought it again with his money, as it was relatively cheap and available. So what are we doing? Our executive is a great group of smart people. We're trying hard to find solutions. This year we decided to raise our registration fees to the kids as high as we think we are able to. We now charge as much as other well-funded and supported softball associations that have superior facilities. We applied for a gaming grant this past year, but was not successful. I understand Sooke Soccer just got approved for the first time, and they've been applying for 8 consecutive years. We will apply again this fall, having learned more about the process. As a short-term solution, we will apply to you for a community grant when that comes available to ensure we have sufficient funds to complete our upcoming season. I recently spoke to the Sooke Community Association and advised them of our situation. They are willing to help but have limited funds and have many groups asking for their assistance. I have found a Sooke Bylaw number 608. I think most of you have that, unless you came in a little bit late. That pertains to the funding of playing fields. I ask that you have a look at that and the reserve fund mentioned in the bylaw. I've spoken to and have the support of the Sooke Economic Development Committee. They know if our fields were in better shape and our volunteers were not task saturated, trying to maintain the fields, fences, parking lots, building, and other infrastructure pieces, that we would have the manpower to host more tournaments. Tournaments that would bring out-of-town teams and their dollars to town. They stay in our hotels, eat in our restaurants, support our businesses, and eat in our concession that's run by the great ladies of the Sooke District Lionesses Club. The funds they raise, as you know, go back to the town, to the people that need it most. In June, my wife and other softball executives came and spoke to you. A motion was passed to have a meeting with the District of Sooke, the Sooke Community Association, and C-Park. I've come to ask you to make sure that meeting happens. I myself would like to be present, as I'm most aware of the needs of both the fields of Art Morris and the Sooke Minor Fastball Association. In the big picture, other towns and municipalities generally maintain their fields and provide an annual operating grant to sports associations to assist in children's sports. The district's now near 20 years old, and I think it's time we have another look at it. And I understand the community association was a different situation for Sooke, but we're getting to a point now where this little sport association can't operate the way it has been for the past decades. That's it. That's what I got.
Okay. Thank you very much for your delegation tonight and for bringing this to our attention for sure, as well as the materials that you provided in advance. I just want to clarify that, we can follow up to make sure the meeting happens. I'm not aware if it occurred.
It has not, no.
No, so that needs to continue. In regards to the Bylaw 608 that you presented, the funds that are in this reserve must be spent only on the land that exists in Sun River.
Okay,
So,
it wasn't specific in the bylaw.
yeah, and I know it isn't. We tried, or the previous council did, when the turf fields were receiving the upgrade. We
Okay.
went and looked at accessing these funds, and through that process determined that these funds there's a restriction. It's part of the land agreement, and I don't remember the full
Okay.
process, but we've been advised that they must be used only on that parcel of land.
Okay,
That's
I
identified,
only found
so-
it, and it wasn't clear. I kind
No,
of
it isn't.
Kind of thought it found
I
something
thought
there.
the same myself, and then only when we went down that avenue did we realize that that wasn't the case.
Fair enough.
And then I think in terms of the request, I've sort of added, it's about just under $85,000.
That was the initial ask, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
initial. So,
Well, it's, now that I'm getting, this is June, and I wasn't
Yeah.
present at the time, and it's just, there's two parts to it. There's operating an association, which
Right.
is me and these kids. And then there's a field that has to be maintained, buildings and infields
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that, which I don't necessarily, I don't want to do that. Like other towns and such, that's somebody does that stuff. I've blown out the irrigation. There was a dead deer inside Diamond Number 1 not too long ago. I called, and unfortunately, it's private property, so bylaw wouldn't take it. I had to deal with it, and so some of our fields are being used as the dog park now because it's fully fenced, and so my wife shoot somebody off, and the ladies ran back to my wife with the kids in the car. So it's, I don't think a ball association president that is advocating just to trying to train kids and coaches and stuff should be trying to maintain a piece of infrastructure as well. It's a unique situation, and it's certainly no fault of the town because it wasn't your property, and it's not your property right now. I just think a solution has to go forward, and the only reason somebody hasn't been here years ago is that Dr. Bryant was kind of funding the whole thing.
Right.
For years. And so, that funding kind of got used up, and now here I am.
Yeah, I totally understand. I think that's even partly sometimes the challenge why the grants don't come in is because they're not lands that are held by the district.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the grants may not be being, the conditions or the stipulations on how they're being issued out are a bit different. So that's, I've sort of heard that as well. Councillor Beddoes and Parkinson, I believe.
Yeah, I've had the honor or privilege or pressed into the concession down there, and I can say that, when teams come from outside our area, they are just absolutely taken aback at how friendly and how well they're treated out here. And I share your concerns with the field. Again, the complication, of course, is that it's a Sooke Community Association. So I concur with you that we should get on and get a three-way dialogue going, how we can better support our youth in this community. I look down at the wonderful soccer field we have for the kids now. Well, maybe it's time we started looking into the softball and baseball part of things. I understand that our baseball kids that want to play hardball or baseball actually go to Langford and play for the Triangle Little League.
There is an extension of Sooke that they play on the Sea Park.
Yeah. But, it'd be nice if we had a better field to incorporate it all. We've got these, potential, some wonderful fields, but I assume you're needing some help. And you're coming to us, and I think we should look at it.
I mean, that material is not cheap to replace the fields. You're looking at
understood
$10,000 in material per field for the 3 fields just to replace them.
Absolutely. Was there another hand on this side? Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, I would like to request that someone from council sit on this committee and that we look at doing it right away in the new year and get the groups together so that it's done for the upcoming season and not continue to wait.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Okay. What committee exactly?
Well, you would. There was a request that the Sooke Minor Fastball Association get together with Sea Park, the Community Association, and the District of Sooke. So we should have a representative from the District of Sooke meeting with everybody.
Yeah. So there is that resolution. So we can follow. We do have one. It's just the meeting never happened. So we can
Correct.
just.
And I would just like to see if anybody on our council would like to sit on that.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Well, we'll look at coordinating the meeting and then see who's available, and take it. We can go and then see from there. Councillor McMath?
I would like to be that person.
Okay. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. I just wanted to remind you that the District of Sooke Community Grant Program, the deadline this year is January 15th.
Yes, it is, yeah.
And you know about it.
Yes, I do.
Right? Up to $7,000 is available.
Yes.
And more if it's by unanimous approval of council.
Yes.
And I see that it would cover number 1, 2, 5 on your minor capital projects list. It could not cover the lawn maintenance because wages are not covered in this program.
Yeah.
But so yes, by all means, get an up, and that's out to all community groups. We have a good long tradition of these community grants going forward. Yeah, so definitely we will, and like I said, it'll kind of be a stopgap. In the long term, I'm not here to change the world, but I don't essentially want to have to come back year after year after year. And now that we're in this position to say, hey, am I keeping the doors open or not?
But in the short term,
For the
yes,
short term,
I will be
yeah.
coming, and thank you for the information.
Okay.
I will be, just to ensure we can get through the end of this year, for sure.
Okay, Councillor Logans?
Thank you for coming forward, not just for your own organization, but I think what this does is it actually starts a conversation, a larger conversation in our community about many different playing fields and that sort of thing.
I'm here for Sooke
that are
soccer, too. My
typically
kids play
taken on
soccer.
by parks departments. We haven't had one until a year ago. So
Totally.
of course
Yeah.
we're new to all this, but it is something that's coming up. So thank you to your organization for pulling this all together, because it's going to be a larger conversation, I think, going forward.
I think you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm well aware of the Sooke soccer. My daughter plays there. My wife's on the executive of that too. So yeah, I can go put the other jacket on at some point.
That'll be for the next delegation.
Yeah, no, one jacket at a time here, folks.
Yeah. Okay, so I think if you just leave it with us,
Okay.
we'll get that meeting. Councillor McMath has already volunteered to step into it. I'll
Excellent.
join her at the table, and we'll look to make that happen this year if we can.
Good.
Okay,
Thank you very much
Perfect.
for taking the time to listen to me.
all right. Thank you for your time today. Okay, so moving on into item 8 is our public question and comment period. And so this here is for any and all items on tonight's agenda, except for, I think, the intercommunity business license. That is its own public input built into it. So on all other items except for 9.1, please. And we'll just need your name, address. If you could let us know which item you're speaking to, we'll go from there. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Britt Santowski. I live at 2206 Church Road, and this is on item 12.1, the AVICC resolution. And I would just like to remind you that with last council, I put forward a proposed resolution to amend the interpretation for advertising, and it was said that you guys would put it forward with the AVICC. So I'm just reminding you. I don't know if you want me to resubmit it or if you guys still have it.
Don't have it handy. There has been one, though, that speaks to that already passed by the UBCM, that passed on the difference in modernizing public submissions. So there's different ones
get
that
the memo. That's
come
awesome.
out.
Okay.
But perhaps if you could resubmit your...
I'll resend it because I'll resend it.
You could resend it because we still have some time, and I don't remember, and then we can just compare, and we still have time to meet that pertinent deadline.
I'll send it to corporate offices.
Through your worship, we have the resolution. That's okay.
Perfect.
You're good?
You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
if you could maybe forward it to us so that we're clear on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Santowski. Okay, other items, public comment, and any public comment, please.
Ellen Lors, 5526 Sooke Road. I'd like to speak to the temporary permit application. The district Sooke has denied and in fact prohibited and enforced bylaws on Dale Arden of Arden Storage when he installed a transfer garbage business without application to the district and for a rezone. And when Sooke Garbage Disposal attempted to move their garbage disposal to property on Sooke River Road, they were shut down and constantly harassed from paving their property outside the property, which said pavement had to be removed, to shutting down and removing a camper, which was a living quarter. The district is putting itself in a position of a lawsuit by the above, if it allows, and indeed abets an illegal operation of this magnitude at 5536, which has numerous complaints and even a cease and desist, yet continues with impunity. Council is obligated to treat all peoples the same and not to discriminate. Pure and simple. Operation illegal. Give 6 months to move the operation to an appropriate zone. This is a residential area and severely impacts our neighborhood. I would also ask that at the same time as Council looks at how operations fly under the radar by making renovations to existing businesses at under $50,000, thus not applying for development permits, no traffic study to the area, increased traffic, no impact on neighboring properties which occur without any consultation. Each year the business can add another under $50,000 addition to the business without any consultation. Temporary permits, allowable uses, may and shall not and not shall permit the following. I don't believe that council members have been given the information what a temporary permit use is, and I think that's important if you're going to be voting on a temporary use permit. It's in the Local Government Act. Temporary use permits for designated areas and other areas. An application, an owner of land or local government may issue a temporary permit as follows: by resolution in relation to land within an area designated under Section 492, by bylaw in relation to land within an area outside a municipality, if there is no official community plan in effect for the area. A temporary permit may, or not, it says may, do one of the following: allow a use not permitted in a zoning bylaw, specify conditions under which the temporary use may not be carried on, allow and regulate the construction of building or structures in respect of the use for which the permit is issued. If a local government delegates the power to issue a temporary use permit under this section, the owner of the land that is subject to the decision of the delegate is entitled to have the local government reconsider the matter.
Okay, Ms. Lewis, you're
then
over.
It goes on.
We got it. You're over your 2 minutes. So.
I know. I'll wrap it up.
Okay.
But I will give this information to staff, and I hope it gets passed on to council, because they should know what a temporary permit is.
We can get staff to answer that for us.
Okay, thank you. And what happens if owners of the land do not apply for a temporary permit? That's a question. We have now changed the gateway residential to allow permits for commercial and industrial, although this was not in the intent of the OCP. It was to keep the area rural and residential. Even if when we have an OCP review, the temporary permit use will remain in the gateway, remain in the OCP in the gateway residential, as council has forever changed the OCP without public consultation process. Thank you.
Okay, other speakers tonight?
Hello. My name is Betty Tully, and I'd like to speak to the zoning amendment bylaw 723-600-66-218. I have a lot that's 3/4 of an acre that will be next door to this development. 1/3 of my property is covered by covenants with the District of Sooke for a salmon-bearing creek. 100 feet from that creek is where this development is going to be. How serious are you about salmon-bearing creeks? This is a watershed. My property is on a slope. So you know what's going to happen if there's any activity in there. Now I see that there's an amendment here, or a covenant, a possibility for a 2-meter barrier. So 100 feet away, it's 2 meters, and on my property, it's 20. Doesn't seem fair to me. I think that there should be some sort of serious environmental action taken before anything else is done with this property. Those creeks run into the ditches that go along Helgeson Road. I walk that road every day. There are fish in those ditches. So if you think you're going to be able to do something with Helgeson Road, widen it, whatever, you've got not ditches, you've got creeks with fish in it. So again, this is a serious environmental issue, and I think that you need to have more consideration before you pass even the first or second reading with this request. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tully.
Hello. Excuse me. Steve Unger, 6698 Helgeson Road. I'm speaking to the same bylaw, number 6.2. We are the neighbors of the proposed, or the property under proposed rezoning. We actually own the farm, the ALR property there. And I would like to reiterate the concerns of the previous speaker in that that is an environmentally delicate area. Through our property alone, we have 3 salmon-bearing streams. The ditch she talks about along Helgeson Road is actually Helgeson Creek. and it is salmon bearing, although I don't know why they would want to swim out there. Nonetheless, this is a very fragile area. It feeds into Demamio Creek, ultimately into the Sooke Basin. Any ill-conceived stormwater runoff, sewage spills, etc., will feed directly into Demamio Creek, which is a key salmon-bearing habitat. In addition, there is significant wildlife that run up and down that corridor: deer, cougar, wolves, etc. We request that Council take the utmost caution with regards to the rezoning application here, and keep in mind that this is a very, very critical ecosystem within the District of Sooke. Thank you. Well, one last thing. I'd like to thank the ALC as well as district staff for their support so far.
Thank you.
Good evening, Derek Lewers, 5526 Sooke Road. Speaking to the zoning text amendment. Here we are once again. It's been almost 1 year since the official bylaw complaint launched in January, and still no resolution in sight. It seems like these proposed amendments are a solution looking for a problem. Keep in mind, we would not be discussing any of these changes if it wasn't for this one property. We continue to dig a deeper hole after every change as we try to customize the laws retroactively to accommodate one owner who just needs to be held accountable for flagrantly breaking District of Sooke bylaws and taking advantage of District of Sooke staff and taxpayers. The district has created a precedent by creating the term never heard before historic nonconforming definition in our OCP, with an arbitrary date to define historic, even though the previous OCP still would have prohibited this business, as did the CRD bylaws before that. This change impacted the OCP for 900 properties to help one owner. Now, because of that retroactive action, staff now are having you asked to change the zoning bylaw because it now conflicts with the OCP. This time, the change will be affecting all Sooke taxpayers, so that this one owner can apply for a temporary use permit that may or may not even be granted if it was allowed. The reports from staff have, over the past two amendments, both this and the OCP mapping change, have called the proposed changes minor. Although minor in nature as pertaining to changing words in a document or lines on a piece of paper, they are indeed minor. However, in regards to the impacts of the council vote and the community impact on those words on legal documents have on Sooke's future, they are anything but minor, and any decision should not be made lightly. Ask yourself, what is the end game here? Even if we allow for the application through all this, and it is granted by changing all these laws retroactively, it will only be temporary, as there are no legal way for the existing building and business to carry on due to the use, the lot size, and yes, despite the public hearing last time, I've confirmed the lot size is not large enough through BC assessment and surveyors. It's not large enough. The lot shape, the setbacks, etc. So why would we waste any more taxpayers' time or resources rewriting any of our laws for the special interests of one party? As previously stated, as with any government, no government is necessarily bound by the decisions of past governments, and that's why people and governments get elected or unelected. This election we just had seems to have sent a very strong signal as to the people's feelings on what...
Mr. Lewis, you need to wrap up.
I'm on the last paragraph, if I may. Okay. Sent a very strong signal as to what the regards are until the bylaw enforcement and special treatment, and those of you sitting at this table now are the proof of that. It is my view, and I think that of the community at large, that we expect the rules to be followed. We do not expect favoritism shown to anyone in our community, and an equal playing field for all. And as such, Council should deny this special amendment, have staff bring forward a repeal of Bylaw 724-400-12. We should at the same time, based on the complaint-driven bylaw process, initiate a full bylaw compliance request for the property at 5536 Sooke Road. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Thank you. If you could please turn on the microphone. It's just, thank you very much. Here we go.
My name's Alison Geimer. I live at 6732 Helgeson Road. I'd like to reiterate the two previous speakers regarding the zoning application for 2445 Otter Point Road. The OCP for Sooke talks about maintaining the rural character of Sooke. our property is very rural, and if all the land is developed and the trees are removed, it's going to take away that rural character. Consequently, it will reduce our the value of our homes, which is also another consideration in the OCP. In addition, the trees on lot 2445 Otter Point Road act as a barrier because they're a group of trees all together, so they consequently protect the scattered trees on each of our properties. If you remove that barrier, all our trees will become very vulnerable, and we may end up incurring expenses to have those trees removed, which once again will take away that rural feel, and we will be incurring additional expenses. The final thing I just wanted to say is that at the moment the lots are all large enough that bears and humans can coexist. We haven't had to report any incidents with the bears. If you now introduce some smaller lots with no trees or protection, there will no doubt be the case that bears will have to be destroyed, endangering the wildlife. And I don't think that that's very fair on that we take away their space. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there other speakers this night?
Is this on? Hi, I'm Karen McLeod. I live at 6754 Steeplechase, and I'm terrified to speak. I'm here to request an amendment to Bylaw 39251.1, feeding wildlife. I believe even with this bylaw omitting bird feeders, the intent of the municipality to penalize anyone feeding wildlife with food waste or materials isn't only infeasible to enforce, but it is also impossible to uphold because of the nature of this bylaw will require paving all of Sooke. We interact with nature everywhere we go, but our intention is not to feed large wildlife. Since we all know that our bear problem is caused by consistent garbage feeding, which is food waste, seasonal foods such as fruit trees and gardens should also be exempt, as at best it attracts wildlife for a few days if unfenced, same as blackberries. To uphold the nature of this bylaw would also hurt local businesses with regards to garden supplies. We live in a garden city as well as a bear country. I believe amending this bylaw to simply say food waste is a fair compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLeod, and also for your letter. Other speakers tonight? Can I go to first-time speakers? I'll come back to you. Are there any first-time speakers this evening on the agenda?
I'll make a comment. Just while we're on the subject, anyways. Mick Rhodes, 7885 West Coast Road. As far as the development 2445 Otter Point Road, I hope the council is very cautious about all of this because it seems like quite a heavy development going on there, and listening to all the other concerns, and I'm going, there's 2 dwellings there, maybe there could be 4. I don't know what the person's intention is that wants to put 27 in, but I would think that less is more in a sense. And just something I just wanted to remind council is he hasn't offered any really amenities. There's supposed to be a common trail. He says, I'll give you cash. Of course, he's going to make a lot of money off of this, I suppose. As far as the buffer between the ALR land, the ALC, the Agricultural Land Commission, said 5 meters. He says, well, 3 because it's going to mess up my properties. And I'm kind of going, well, we know what's in it for him, but what's in it for us? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
It's on. My name's Corey Elliott. I reside at 6722 Helgeson Road, and I am the property south of the property on 2445 Otter Point Road. I'm pro-development, and I understand the need for residential infill development. I believe that location and planning is key to successful integration. I have strong objections to the density of the proposed development due to the location of the land. It's surrounded on the south by properties that are a minimum of 3/4 of an acre each, and on the east side by ALR land that is used for farm at the moment. And the north side is, I think there's 5 acreages that go north. Under the current zoning of R1, the applicant can achieve approximately 16 lots. That would seem to be a reasonable densification for the site and would not require rezoning. I have many concerns with the proposed project. A quick list that's not even totally thought through yet would be the configuration of the road that the proponent is proposing. It's a T-shape, and I don't really know if there's been any thought for firefighting, fire truck capability. Has that been reviewed by engineering? I don't understand the decision for the T formation at the end of the road rather than a cul-de-sac. Leads one to think there may be a plan for lands beyond. The increased parking and traffic issues, 27 lots with suites, would create the need for 81 parking stalls, 3 lots for each site. Existing property is currently a wildlife corridor, as has been mentioned. Bears and owls are common occurrences around our properties. What happens to them when there are no trees and when the backyards are 4.5 meters? That's 14.76 feet. That's ridiculous. I think my truck is about that long. This is really a great impact on my privacy, the enjoyment of my home, as well as the environment. I have around a dozen trees in my backyard, and as mentioned, what happens when they clear-cut this development to have these 4.5-meter backyards? How will my trees fare with this no-support canopy? Will I be paying upwards of $10,000 to remove the trees that become hazardous on my property? What about a green space buffer? Has anybody discussed this in their preliminary design meetings?
I need you to wrap up, please. We're over the time.
Okay. Basically, I think that there's a lot that has to be looked at this development from council, and I hope that they take their time and due diligence and do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. And just so we can move on, are there other first-time speakers? Okay.
Hi. Melissa Curtis, 6157 Calvert Road. It's on the zoning amendment bylaw. I just wanted to speak on briefly. I'm really nervous. Okay. I couldn't understand even in October when the option of changing anything to do with the OCP even came up. I'm still confused now, being that 2019 is the planned time frame to have the community involved in creating a brand new one. So I'm looking at this and I'm still a bit confused as why we would be doing any of these changes now without going through the proper procedure, which we would want to do for the community. It doesn't make sense. It would be like knowing you're going to be selling a house within the year, yet deciding to do full renovations on it, only to know that you're going to sell it and it could be bulldozed. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you spend that money? And it's not your personal money, it's taxpayer money to do that. The second thing is it keeps saying a minor text change, and you're saying it could potentially affect 900 properties. If we attribute 4 people to each property or household, which is pretty average, that's 3,600 people. With the 13,000 that Sooke is at or was at in 2016, that's a percentage of 27% of Sooke population. That's more than a quarter of the population it can potentially affect. That's not a minor change. And I think those are things that we need to think about because you're considering it for one person, 27%.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis. I'll go to Mr. and Mrs. Lures now, and then we're going to move on into the agenda. You will need to stay in your 2 minutes, Ms. Lures.
Pardon me?
You'll need to stay in your 2 minutes this time?
Yes, Mrs. Lures Farmhouse. Ellen Lures, 5526 Sooke Road. I just wanted to speak to this zoning amendment for this property for the 27 acres, or 27 lots, rather. I'm very familiar with Innisquash Farms. With Mrs. Lunson, I was a frequent visitor and helper out in that area. And I remember her standing in front of this in this council chambers when there was another subdivision going on. She says, I cannot take any more water onto my property. because every time there's development, water comes onto her property. She destroyed her hay fields, so she had to buy hay because she couldn't grow enough hay. And anything that happens next to farming property, we really have to be considerate. And of course, the Demamio Creek has been discussed. And there's that type of development, 27 lots, is way too much for that area. It's low land in there. It totally affects the people there. The creeks, we're all familiar with those creeks, and they're all salmon-bearing creeks in there. So I would hope that council would look at this and say, this is really much too dense for this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lures?
I promise I'll be under my 2 minutes. Just a brief thought. I looked at the agenda package for tonight's meeting, and I saw it was, in the range of 300 pages. I understand that there was some in-camera minutes as well that had to be read. Some are approaching 200 pages. And as a community member who elected officials to make good decisions on good information, I think that you guys really have to ask yourselves if you should set a limit to your agenda sizes, like a range. Because I don't know how you all, with being family people and members of the community with lives, can reasonably be expected to get 500 pages into your heads between Thursday afternoon and tonight. And we're expecting you to make good decisions on that. You need to be able to read that. You need to be able to go back to staff, ask questions where you need to ask questions. And if the meeting is going to be 5 hours long because people like me keep coming up to talk, at the end of that, how are your decisions going to be made at the end of the night on top of that? So I hope that council maybe makes a consideration in that and looks at limiting how much of it is that pressing of an issue. Can you push it to another meeting? And I don't want to see this council get burnt out too quick. So it's just a thought. Thanks.
Well, thank you for your thoughtfulness. All depends on the subject matter, I suppose. Okay, in comparison, a CRD package is over 1,000 pages. So, anyway. Okay, so we can deal with that when we talk about our procedural bylaw. But on this note, we are going to talk a bit about emergency weather shelters, which is item 11.1, or nope, sorry, it's 11.6. So I understand that some folks, Jen Wild on behalf of Our Place, is here in the gallery this evening, and there was discussion that was brought forward. I believe this is an email from we have a brief report here, and then there was an email provided by Councillor Bateman. And so a bit of history is in September I convened a meeting with stakeholders just to talk about what our community needed, and I had meetings previously with Sooke Shelter about the upcoming extreme weather season, which is upon us now actually. And unfortunately one of the locations for space fell through. The only downside of course is finding, I shouldn't say that there's an only downside. It's upsetting that we don't have anything in place yet for this winter, nor have we for a few years past now. The Baptist Church had kindly hosted this in the past, but also their location is not ideal. It's not in the core. It's a drive away, and it's not always easy to get to. So still grateful for the services that they offer, but I think there's always a need to find something within town. So there has been some articles that have been brought forward, and then Councillor Bateman kindly provided us with a bit more information here. I guess just to reiterate what it is that we need a place that's open from, 7 in the evening till 7 in the morning, if I'm not mistaken, on any given night because of the weather conditions. That could be rain, it could be minus temperatures, it could be accumulation of snow, wind, whatever. So a combination of some or one or of all the above. The challenge is finding the suitable space, I suppose. So I think at this point I'll hand it over to Councillor Bateman, who provided the email, and we're just looking to see if we could find something. I think in the email that you provided, it was about using the hall. The challenge, as I understand it, though, is that the hall is a bustle of activity all the time. Like even sometimes when we've looked at having community events at the community hall and it's come up, well, why aren't you at the hall? Well, it's booked. Like it's booked. Like there's so many community groups that rely on the building. Having free and clear access to it isn't easy. So perhaps I'll hand it over to you, and we'll just see where this goes. And Ms. Wild, thank you for being here tonight as a resource to us.
So yes, I attended the mayor's forum back in September, and had got a sense of all the work that's being done, and the fact that we do have a pretty remarkable social safety net here in the Sooke region, given our size and our capacity to undertake projects. Nonetheless, there are certain gaps in that social safety network. With the Sooke Region Multi-Belief Initiative, which emerged out of the mayor's a summit back in 2016, we organized a open space meeting in late October, and out of that is coming a report which identifies the homeless issue as a key one that we need to address, and in the short-term compassionate actions, as we work towards a compassionate action plan for the district, there is definitely this extreme weather shelter, and Jen Wild was at that meeting along with the people from the Sooke shelter, and there was good forward progress, and for a variety of good reasons it's not happening in the location that was intended, and we now need, as I wanted to bring this forward because out in the world when this story emerged last week, there was talk, the community hall downstairs in the kitchen area might be ideal, or someone had mentioned the fire hall as perhaps a possibility, and is there something that we as a community can do while keeping in perspective that according to BC Housing Statistics, there's 177 shelters operating in 49 communities in BC, i.e. in one-third of the municipalities, that we have 38 emergency shelters in total across the province, and the closest, so 38 shelters, and so we shouldn't feel shame at not having an emergency shelter here. However, we are this compassionate community. We're doing all sorts of positive things, so let's see what we can do. So wonderful that Jen's here tonight, and I hope you can stand up and come speak to us on this subject. Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine. I guess the question, has there been any update since these articles went out? Has something changed, that there is something that's been landed or close to? Turn on the microphone. Microphone. Sorry, right.
First of all, I'm not with Our Place, I'm with BC Housing.
Okay.
So what we have in place at this point is we have funding. We have the community participants who have all gathered together and put together a plan. We've put together the indication of need in the region, so we have spent the time. I had the point-in-time count that was done in Victoria. I had them brought out to Sooke so that we could actually indicate what was going on out here. I think that it was a slightly poor indication as to the actual numbers, the people that were willing to participate because of the location. Sooke is a rather large region, and a lot of people don't come into the downtown core. They don't access the services. So we weren't able to indicate a full number, but we do have people living rough here. And the issue that I have with Sooke, and the reason that I find this so challenging, is because it's so far away to get people from here to an emergency shelter. When we're talking about emergency shelters and we're talking about temporary seasonal shelters, we're talking about facilities that are operating a shelter. Those are places that people go to access resources. What my program is far more akin to what the Red Cross does during an earthquake. It's totally separate. This is an emergency response program. This is something that we do in our communities to make sure that we don't lose people while we're trying to figure out what to do to support them. And that's what's really critical here. What my concern is right now is that we need to find a space to be able to put people in an emergency. So what do we do in this municipality in the event that we have an earthquake? What do we do in this municipality in the event that we have some sort of an emergency disaster where we have to manage our housed individuals that are in this community, and how do we take care of them, and why is it not something that can be applied to this particular program? So this is something that operates only from November until the end of March. We activate on average of about 40 times a year. We really don't get a ton of snow here. We really don't get a ton of really terrible weather here. But the people who live rough here do not have the equipment to be able to maintain themselves. during that time. They don't have parkas, they don't have snowsuits, they don't have the things that they would need to be able to support themselves in the event that we did have a snowstorm hit. We are activated also when it's like, high winds or excessive amounts of rain, but we don't get rain warnings until there's 50 millimeters of rain falling from the sky. That's a lot of rain. And people being able to stay dry, they cannot maintain their health and they cannot maintain their own lives. So this is a critical need for the community. And what I'm asking for right now is I'm looking for a space. This space does require that we have a public liability insurance. And because of the nature of the program, we have a few options. We have community centers, we have gymnasiums, we have municipally owned properties. That's what has public liability insurance on it. So what I have done at this point is we have approached as many different organizations as we can in this area, and we have not yet secured a location. We are mid-season, and we do have people that need a space, and they need a space soon. And so what I'm looking for is a really temporary solution. We have housing coming. It's great. BC Housing's announcement, that recent announcement, is incredible, and it's going to be a wonderful opportunity to be able to support a lot of people in a real, tangible way. Mm-hmm. But until we get there, we do need to have somewhere to be able to make sure that we don't lose them before we get that housing built.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, through the chair. I heard you say something really key there, and that was you had money.
Yes, I have funding.
Well, okay, and because I have talked to a number of different organizations like the Community Association, and one of the big concerns is we're dealing with street people. Some of them have mental health issues, some of them have substance abuse issues, and a need for some supervision. For the Community Association themselves, that, as the mayor says, there's a lot of things go on there, and to put a number of people in there, even on a short term, we would need to have somebody staffing it to be on hand.
Well,
so you're telling me that,
you
possibly have that?
We have, not only do we have the funding in place right now, we also have an organization from downtown Victoria, Our Place Society, willing to administer and hire staff and look after those staff. Train them and everything. We have all the pieces together except for the building. Literally every piece of this.
Okay, it's good to know. I wasn't aware that we had the people on the ground to administer this when and if the need comes. Okay, good point. What was your short list for some of the people or some of the buildings? You looked at it.
Well, we looked at community centers. We looked at
like the Sooke, our community center downtown, and the churches and
things
like that.
We looked at a variety of different churches. We looked at places where it's already a public meeting space, and we asked a lot of different organizations. We asked a lot of spaces, and for a variety of different reasons, they weren't able to do it. In some cases, it has to do with their daytime programming. If their daytime programming was going to interfere with our ability to be able to use that space, we couldn't use it. If there was issues with their public liability insurance, we couldn't use it. So there's a lot of crossover that can happen. And so at this point, I'm sort of reaching out to the municipality of Sooke to take this on. And if I could perhaps have somebody who is able to focus from the District of Sooke on partnering with me to be able to support this process, that would be really helpful.
I think the challenge is just it's still the space.
In
the end, I think we could find someone to assist. It's just determining the space. Just to clarify, so with the space though, there is no one required. Like, let's say it was the community, just as an example, would they need volunteers from that organization available at any point, or no?
It depends on the access to the building. So,
okay.
For instance, like when I was using the Victoria Native Friendship Center Community Center in Saanich, we actually had our own private key access to the building, and so we didn't require anybody from the Friendship Center to actually support that process. We just came into the building, utilized our stuff, put it all away, and then left.
Okay, so that's where it just depends on the access.
It depends on the building,
okay.
It depends on the space itself, but really what we need is just a space with a washroom.
Right.
I mean, we could literally take care of every other piece. That's all we need.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Logans?
Couple questions. In terms of liability, you touched on it briefly, but just so I can wrap my head around it, is that something that it's possible to bump up if we have a location that perhaps does not have the proper liability
It
insurance?
would depend on the bumping up.
Right.
In some cases, the bumping up has been far too much for BC
Right.
Housing to be able to consider, especially in terms of an emergency response program, but potentially, it's a conversation.
Right. And do you see a place, perhaps within this program or perhaps in partnership, where we could do some stigma education?
In terms of like the public support?
Right.
I think that this is kind of that step. This is the opportunity to have that conversation. If we actually start to engage in the community and operating an emergency response program, that is the opportunity to be able to help with that stigma, because it then allows people to see, oh, hey, that worked out no problem and nothing happened and it was great. Most people who are in that severe amount of crisis, I mean, the amount of issues that we have in those shelters is very minimal. It's not like your regular shelter programs that you have downtown. It doesn't operate the same way, and it doesn't have the same feel to it, because when people are coming in, I'll tell you, if you are a person who is in crisis and then it snowed on your head, you're on a whole other level. And really, they just come in, you meet their needs. People walk through the door and you are meeting people's 3 basic needs: shelter, food, love, and belonging. They walk in the door, their needs are met, they just go to sleep. Really, they do. And so if we had the opportunity to be able to actually have a response here in Sooke, and if people were able to witness that response, I think that it would really help with the stigma involved right now. I think that there's an awful lot of conversations of what ifs that are happening currently. And there are so many what ifs. You could build an entire novel of what ifs, and it really could be alleviated just by starting something like this up. And it would probably assist us in moving forward and actually taking some of those next steps to alleviate the reason those people are homeless in the first place.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you to BC Housing and everyone else who's part of it, because once I heard that there were volunteers, or sorry, not volunteers, but staff dedicated to this project, and also that they would be like cleaning and like taking care of everyone, and it's just incredible that there's that support there, and it's a shame that we can't fill that need with the location right now, and I really hope that we can find one, but I'd be happy to help you if you need the help.
Great.
Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you, Councillor Logans. Councillor St. Pierre, then Parkinson. Councillor Bateman, can you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you.
It's just a question for the Fire Chief, if he's available. And that's that Jen was kind enough to let us know that there was a good opportunity to basically link up our emergency response with the extreme weather. What sort of facilities do we have if there was an earthquake and people needed a warm place to stay? Do we have some kind of response in that area?
Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre. So in the case of an emergency, the Sooke Emergency Program would be activated, and we'd be requesting a task number from Emergency Management BC. Likely a scenario could be an immense windstorm or an ice storm. Our systems end up going into action, and that includes setting up a reception center, a temporary mustering location. It wouldn't just be focused on displaced people or homeless people. It would be any residents impacted. The emergency support services team gets involved dealing with residents that are impacted right away, and they're entitled to provincial funding if they're displaced for a certain amount of time. Under the Emergency Management Act, we can take over buildings and facilities and do a few things and something set up like that. But as my experience, being in emergency operations centers, it's very seldom that it's just done specifically for, displaced vulnerable people just because of a weather change. It's normally related to some natural disaster.
Through the chair. So my understanding is that we don't have any specified locations. They would simply be acquired in a great emergency.
Through the chair, that would be correct based on the incident and where the location of the incident and the staffing resources and the amount of people we have boots on the ground to support the incident.
Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I was just curious, does Langford or Metchosin or Viral or Colwood have any places for their displaced?
No.
So wouldn't it be a good idea for all the municipalities in our area to come together to create something where everybody can go to instead of having it out here and one in town? Because for the other people, for I guess Colwood and that, it's a distance to go to for the people as well. So I would think that we would all come together and each of the municipalities could also put in funding for a place. Has that been looked at?
Langford and Colwood, all of those, View Royal, those municipalities all have access to the Victoria Native Friendship Centre, and a lot of their people end up going there. There's a different demographic of people who live rough here in Sooke than the people that live beyond our borders. It's been a very interesting thing for me to observe, because the population that is out here, we have attempted on numerous occasions to try and get them into the downtown core because we need to get them supports. We take them to the downtown core and they end up losing everything. They end up having all of their stuff taken from them. They end up, they're the innocents, if you will. I know it may not seem like that from our perspective, but they are in the downtown core. The people who are living in sort of the Langford-Colwood area are generally people who are just living outside the red zone, which is the area where people are not allowed to go into the downtown core. And so they're the downtown core population living on the outskirts. So it's a very different demographic of homelessness. Homelessness is a very complex issue. And depending on where you're looking at it and what type of community you're looking at, it's a very different issue. People that live out in the Sooke area, for instance, don't tend to be in trouble with this with as much of the way of the hard drugs as they do right in the downtown core where they have access. So it's a very different demographic. The way that they self-regulate themselves is very different. The way that they access resources is very different. So Sooke is actually very unique. It's a very unique population. It's a very unique space. And a lot of people who are attempting to escape sort of the downtown core lifestyle come here to escape that. So it's a safer place. So because of the uniqueness of our demographic here, we would need to be able to create space for them here.
Through your worship, so would BC Housing be able to help in providing a place to be built?
Well, that would be an entirely other conversation, and I certainly couldn't speak to that.
Right. Thank you.
So, Councillor Bateman?
So, yes, just quickly speaking to that. Now, last year we did not have a extreme weather shelter here, did we?
Correct.
And the year before we did, thanks to a provider.
It was actually more than a few years ago.
Oh, a few years, okay. So if we can't find a short-term solution, the longer-term ideal solution, is this a purpose-built shelter that you'll be able to access as we look down the road? If BC Housing was not part of the scenario, even can the district get involved?
If I had my other hat on my head right now and I was actually just Jen Wild, resident of Sooke, really what I would love to see ideally in this district is a space right now that we could house the food bank, the crisis center, and a shelter.
Yeah.
Really, in the ideal world, like if I could, wave my magic wand and that's what we could build right now, that's what I would see as an ideal, because we have a number of different programs that are helping our vulnerable persons right now who are in critical states of losing the capacity to be able to assist those people because they don't have a space. So in an ideal world, that's what I would like to see happen. And then that would be a regular shelter system. That would not be my program, because then we would have something available on a regular basis for people to support them. Totally different.
So dream it, and it may be so.
Right, that's why I said it out
loud.
But
in the meantime, though, Councillor Logans has offered to help with this season, so thank you for that very much. So a couple final questions from Councillor Parkinson, then Councillor St. Pierre.
So on all through your worships, through all the locations that have been looked at, have they looked at places like the Flats, which is the Community Association grounds? Or does the place have to be in the center of town, or can it be on the outskirts, or is there?
Ideally, it would be in a space where people could walk to, where they're already going to access resources. So something that's close to the core would be far more ideal. When we operated it out at the Sooke Baptist Church a number of years ago, people wouldn't go. To get there in the middle of a storm, like if it's blowing and snowing and windy and you've got all your stuff and it's in a cart or in something and you're trying to pull it along, you won't bother.
Right. So it has to be in the core is what you're looking for.
It would be preferable if it was in the core.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor St. Pierre?
Through your worship, I was present at some of the meetings, and I know it was discussed possibly doing some work on the septic system, I believe, for the crisis center that exists right now. Is that a no-go? Looks like it's a no-go.
Yeah, I can't really speak to that.
It's all right. Someone. There was some talk of actually using the crisis center, but there were issues around the washroom facilities and the need to do something about that. And there was some thought that it might be possible to fix them up. But it seems, based on some expert opinion that I've just gotten from the audience, that that's not necessarily going to be possible.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Councillor Logans, if there's any way I can support or empower you, please let me know. And thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you for taking the time to hear this.
Okay. Okay, so moving on tonight is item 9.1, the Intercommunity Business License Bylaw number 702. So I'll turn this over to our enforcement officer, please.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. So I'll just briefly reintroduce what the Intercommunity Business License is. It is a license agreement for municipalities throughout the island, as far as Campbell River, to agree that a license holder for a fee of $170 a year is able to operate their mobile business in another municipality without having to pay an individual non-resident business license. This helps to reduce the red tape for mobile businesses and is a great tool when businesses typically are slow. They have the ability to work in other municipalities and not have to deal with high business license fees and red tape. So we're asking for adoption of the Intercommunity Business License. There will be a rollout early in 2019. Proudly, the District of Sooke is one of the first to carry the process this far and as quickly as we have. There will be a publicity campaign introducing the business license and its benefits. There's very few liabilities associated with the business license. So, if there's any questions, I'm proud to be one of the first that is bringing it to council, municipality, for approval and carry it forward.
Well, thank you for the presentation and for your work on this file. Questions from members of council? Pretty straightforward. Allows our mobile businesses to work in other communities and it allows them to work here in Sooke while still having their base in another town.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and all the different participating municipalities I see are listed there. And the exclusions are set out here as well. Okay, so on this point, I'll just turn to the public for any public input. So this is a call out to members in the audience. This is specific, though, for the Intercommunity Business License Bylaw number 702. So this public input is specific to that item. If there's anyone here that would like to speak on the matter.
Derek Lewis, 5526 Sooke Road. I just want clarity. We already had an intermunicipal business bylaw before, as I understand it, and this is just an expansion to a broader area on the island as far as expanding it from the core. Is that the only difference between the newest version that's before council today and our old version?
Through your worship, this is an additional to the...
Sorry, Ms. Mills. Sorry, for those of you, could you maybe take your conversation just outside? It's just, I find it a bit difficult to hear. Okay, but thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Mills.
This is in addition to the intermunicipal business license. The intermunicipal business license, of which the lower 13 municipalities are included, is just that. It's a mobile business opportunity, licensing opportunity for the 13 lower island municipalities. The intercommunity business license agreement carries for the island. So it's a much broader reach.
Through your worship, so would a business owner potentially have to have two different versions, or if they had the broader, newest version, they wouldn't need one of the intermunicipal licenses? Like, it's supposed to be less red tape, but is it really less, or do you have to have two different ones?
Through your worship, if the mobile business owner wished to have the intercommunity business license, the island business license, they would have just the island business license. If they have any premise that they're operating from in the municipality, then they also require either a home-based or a commercial for whatever property is associated with the business. But they don't have to pay for the intermunicipal and the intercommunity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lurs. Other comments from members of the audience or questions? All for a second time? Third and final time? Okay. So we'll go back to council then, and looking for adoption, please. That council adopt the bylaw cited as Intercommunity Business License Bylaw number 702-2018. That's moved by Councillor McMath and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any discussion on adoption? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. I was going by hands that time, Councillor Parkinson. Okay, item 10.1 is the zoning amendment bylaw number 707-600-56 for the Prestige, 6928 West Coast Road. This bylaw is here for adoption. Was there something that needed to be met by another jurisdiction and now we're adopting it?
No, through your worship, we were just waiting for a covenant to be registered on title, and that's all now been taken care of.
I see, so that was the only outstanding item. Okay, so looking for council to adopt said bylaw, the zoning amendment bylaw number 707. Move adoption by Councillor Beto, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.2, 2445 Otter Point Road. So I'll turn this over to staff, please, for the presentation.
All right, so this is a rezoning at 2445 Otter Point Road that is being brought forward for first and second reading. Okay. So just an introduction to the site, the property itself. It's approximately 2.07 hectares in size. It's, as you can see on the map, bounded by Otter Point Road to the west, with the exception of a small portion in the southwest corner. It is approximately 90 meters north of Helgeson Road, and as you can see on the map as well, approximately 90 meters north of the Helgeson stream that runs just north of Helgeson Road. It's currently bisected by a right-of-way easement for a former logging railway, which is in favor of the province. The applicant is in the process of removing this from the title. Lands to the north are zoned rural residential, RU4. There are 4 large lot residential R1 zoned properties to the south, as well as 2 existing medium lot residential R2 zoned properties just southwest of the site. Directly abutting the property to the east is an ALR property, which is zoned RU3 small scale agricultural. This is the site of the Inishog farm, which is a small scale mixed use organic farm. As well, worth noting is that there is a 4-lot Bearland Strata subdivision currently taking place directly to the southeast of the subject property, which is showing up as 6712 Helgeson, or where the A is on the site, the zoning map on the screen. And it's also worth Worth noting, the nearest transit stop is currently located on Helgeson Road, close to the intersection with Otter Point Road, approximately where the black dot is on the map, served 4 times a day by BC Transit Route 63. And finally, you can see the topography of the site is generally flat, with a gentle slope running towards the site's eastern boundary from Otter Point Road, and that represents an elevation change of 12 meters. So here are some images of the site as it currently looks. There are two single-family dwellings that are currently on the site, as well as 2 garages. As you can see here, as well as on the previous aerial imagery, it's primarily treed, especially around the edges of the property, with a more of a grassland in the middle. And as I mentioned previously, it's generally flat topography. So in terms of the official community plan, as well as the zoning bylaw, and the policy context surrounding this rezoning, it is within the community residential land use designation in the OCP, which is an area where low to medium density residential growth, as well as efficient use of municipal services, is encouraged by targeting growth towards the community growth area, which this site falls within. Medium density residential subdivisions, a medium density residential subdivision which the proposed rezoning is hoping to achieve would contribute to the range of housing types and densities available in the district, which is one of the goals of this particular land use designation. It's also important to note that the OCP has several references to the need for sufficient buffering between residential and agricultural land, especially policy 4.5.3J, which states that the district should ensure that sufficient buffers are provided between agricultural lands and adjacent non-agricultural properties. The district should consider ALC's best practices during the planning and development processes, which is as well mentioned in the OCP. And in addition, it's also worth mentioning that the form and character guidelines for the development permit area number 2, of which this subdivision will later have to meet if it were to be moving forward, refer to the use of vegetation for screening and to enhance the appearance of development while also improving on-site rainwater management. The applicant is proposing to address this by maintaining a 3-meter wide stand of trees along the eastern boundary of the site, directly adjacent to the ALR property. And I will go into more detail on this in a moment. So looking at the zoning bylaw, as you can see in the table here, there's a quick comparison between the current R1 zone and the proposed R2 zone. R1 being the large lot residential and R2 being medium lot residential. The purpose of this rezoning is to create a 27-lot subdivision, which you can see overlaid now over the image with the proposed conceptual layout that has been received by the applicant. The minimum lot size in the R2 zone is 600 meters squared, which is less than the current R1 zone, of which the minimum lot size is 1,000 meters squared. So in the conceptual design from the applicant, the lot sizes are just around this 600 meter and just above this 600 meter squared size. The maximum lot coverage that would be permitted in the R2 zone is 40%, representing a slight increase over the existing 30% of the R1 zone. The minimum lot width and front setbacks would remain the same. There are slight differences in the side, rear, lane lot line setbacks, but it's important to note that both zones do permit secondary suites or small suites on lots with single-family dwellings. In terms of parking requirements, which at this point have not been addressed but would be addressed, of course, later, would be 2 spaces per single-family dwelling and 1 space per suite. And there's just a more detailed image of the conceptual plan. Okay, so as I discussed, the property is adjacent to an actively farmed ALR property. The applicants initially proposed to address this by constructing a 1.8 meter tall chain link fence along the property boundary. However, this was deemed insufficient by staff due to concerns raised by neighbors. The district's own agricultural buffering policies, which I previously referred to, especially those in the OCP, the Agricultural Land Commission's referral comments, which requested that a vegetative buffer be required on the subject property, as well as the best practices that are established through the Ministry of Agriculture's Guide to Edge Planning. Here are some images of the existing stand of trees on the boundary with the Agricultural Land Reserve property. So, therefore, a 5 meter wide buffer was initially proposed by staff, as this is what the Agricultural Land Commission has suggested in previous instances, although not in this case. They did not suggest a particular width of a buffer. The applicant felt that this much of a buffer would be a detriment to the development potential of the site, and so returned with a compromise of 3 meters as a proposed buffer width. This has been deemed acceptable by the head of Parks and Environmental Services. And it's also important to know that no fence is included in this updated proposal, as it was felt that the thick and very tall existing stand of trees would act as a sufficient barrier to any concerns around trespassing, which a fence would help to mitigate. So it's recommended that a no-build trespass Section 219 covenant be registered on title prior to adoption of the zoning amendment bylaw, and that a tree protection plan be prepared at the time of subdivision to the satisfaction of the head of Parks and Environmental Services to address this buffer. And again, I just remind staff, council, that this was recommended by the Agricultural Land Commission, addressing this through some sort of a buffer, as well as the head of Parks and Environmental Services. And you can see on the map here where the green line is, that shows the location of the 3 meter buffer with the potential building sizes there, and you can also so with the proposed layout as well. So in terms of the site servicing for the proposed rezoning, there was a stormwater management plan prepared by McElhaney Consulting in accordance with Bylaw 404, which I would just remind requires that any runoff generated from the development not exceed what's currently occurring, so that the post-development runoff won't exceed any pre-development runoff. This was accepted by engineering staff. It looked at the ways to manage the on-site stormwater management through roadways with catch basins and vertical seepage pits, and having each lot have its own infiltration system. The proposed subdivision layout shows a 15 meter wide dedicated road, hammerhead, as we might refer to it, in a T shape, as you can see again on the proposed conceptual plan. Just a reminder, this is the rezoning, and this is not subdivision or development, but we are looking at the road dedication. Although it is slightly less than the 18 meters, which is stated in the subdivision standards bylaw 404. The proposed roadway within this road dedication, the actual road itself, would be 8.5 meters, which is the same as what is listed, what is described in bylaw 404, and has been deemed acceptable by development services staff as long as all necessary services are still accommodated within the proposed right-of-way. The applicants have also only been asked to build a sidewalk on one side of the road, per referral comments by engineering staff, which is typical of suburban local roads, and is comparable to, I believe, Callumwood Lane and some other of our suburban local roads, which have slightly less of a road dedication than the 18 meter wide. Fire services have indicated that the proposed conceptual layout is acceptable for fire truck movements with that T. The applicant had initially come back with a proposal with less of a T intersection, and that was deemed unacceptable, so they have returned back to that longer north-south T road there. There was a sewer serviceability review also conducted, as the property is located within the sewer specified area. It's worth noting that it previously bought into the system at its inception for a maximum of 20 units. So since the proposed rezoning would increase the potential number of lots up to 27, they were required to have a sewer serviceability review conducted. This review indicated that there would be no increased demand on the system that the system could not handle. It was determined to be acceptable by the head of development services. The CRD has indicated that in terms of water servicing, that community piped water could be supplied to the site from the existing water main on Otter Point Road. And finally, as per official community plan policy 4.7.3F, the applicant will be providing cash in lieu of affordable housing contribution in the amount of $1,000 per lot, which will be addressed at the time of subdivision. So that would be $27,000 total. Also, in terms of contributions, they are willing to provide cash in lieu of parkland, as Parks and Environmental Services staff have not expressed a strong desire to obtain parkland here, in this particular location. Okay, so the representatives of the applicant are in the audience from McElhaney Consulting. If there are any questions, or otherwise any questions that can be directed to me.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. That was great. Councillor Beddoes, please.
Yeah, through your worship, I understand somebody who gave a presentation there earlier said that right now they could put 16 on it, the way it's zoned now. Is that correct? Or
yes, through your worship, I believe 16. I would have to confirm the total number of lots that would be available now. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to add, members of the public have raised just concerns about the habitat and the fish-bearing streams and the like in particular, in addition to the other ecosystems in that area. What considerations have been done to consider streamside protection? Yes, through your worship, I believe that some members of the public were referring to the Helgeson Stream just north of Helgeson Road. That is at least approximately 80 meters south of the subject property. Helgeson Road is 90 meters south. So the property doesn't fall within the 30-meter riparian area of that stream. And any other concerns related to wildlife and stream protection is something that staff could certainly look into as we move forward, if we move forward to public hearing. Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Councillor St. Pierre.
Through your worship, I've been thinking about this particular situation with regards to not just this development, but a lot of the developments that are happening in Sooke. And specifically with regards to affordable housing, the $1,000 that's offered is just simply not enough. It's ridiculous. I've looked at some of the numbers, and based on what is theoretically supposed to be possible, 10% of the value of the home's affordable housing, we're looking at 2.7 homes at a very lowball estimate, market value of $800,000. Why would we be collecting $27,000 when we have an affordable housing problem? And when this district is perennially poor? I have no idea why do we agree to this? This is absurd. We're going ahead and taking cash in lieu for paths. We need connectivity. We need paths for cyclists and pedestrians and those potentially 27 families that are moving in. Otherwise, we'd have nothing but cars. What, 54 more cars? No extra parking? Route 14 choked up? This is absurd. Why are we doing this? Cash in lieu of park space. They could certainly use a community garden. They could probably use more parking. The parks doesn't necessarily have to do much. The developer should put in parking or a community garden. Why are we taking cash in lieu? It's not worth it. So this whole thing with cash in lieu of things that are worth so much more when developers are making good money, and I don't mind them making their money. Developers are needed. We need homes. We need stuff like that. But the community has to get something back for it instead of just bending over whenever it's asked to. This is ridiculous. I would like, ideally, for us to re-examine all of this, not just with regards to this development. I feel sorry for the developers in this particular case because it's not just about them. It's really about changing our policies and how we're approaching this sort of thing and getting something for the community. Because whenever we make a change, it allows greater density, makes a change to the zoning, makes a change to the OCP, ideally the community should be getting something tangible for it. And not just some minor thing like more density. We can already have more density. Ideally, apartments or duplexes or something that is actually higher density and makes better use of the services. We're just bringing in more commuters. I don't mind commuters. I'm surrounded by them and they're lovely people. But ideally, we want to be able to move away from this kind of a model. And thank you very much.
Councillor Logans, then Beddoes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, staff, for the presentation and the report. There's a lot of information in there. I have a lot of concerns with this development, and as I read through the document, I kept having more and more and more. So I just want to put this on record from my perspective. First of all, the lot size doesn't fit the neighborhood's future. I don't believe that it's something that we need that dense of in that area at this time or in the next couple of decades, perhaps. The building envelope compared to the lot size doesn't fit the neighborhood either. It's a far reach from the surrounding rural and ALR lands, which happen to be active farms, and we're lucky to have active farms there. The added traffic is probably my biggest concern, and not just for parking as usual, but mostly because there are no sidewalks whatsoever in any direction for miles in this area. And these will be homes where people are walking and cycling to school, downtown to the nearby parks, and it's just an area that is not acceptable. And that's not the developer's fault. It's just not an area that's acceptable for density at this time. The current zone would create a decent amount of change, I think, to this area. So I would be happy to leave it as is, of course. The 3-meter buffer is completely unacceptable. And, I feel very strongly that it's unacceptable. Because, so the ALR determined that a 5-meter buffer would be acceptable, and there is a very good reason for that, and that is that what happens when you clear-cut a lot like this is that you severely compromise the trees and the tree system that's left standing. So a 3-meter tree buffer is not going to survive the development. We'll lose a lot of that 3 meters, and that will compromise the neighbors' lands. It will compromise the lives and desires of the people who would live there. The comment that gets me the most is that it would be a detriment to the development capabilities of the site to put a 5-meter buffer. Well, this site is a detriment to our community, and I think strongly along the lines of Councillor St. Pierre, in the sense that our community needs to be asking for what it deserves, and we need to prioritize developments that actually care about our environment. And that's not just because I'm some hippy-dippy councillor sitting here. That's because I just spent 3 days with a group of hundreds of people talking about what matters in this community, and the number one thing was the environment and the trees and the greenery and the green space. And when I see this lot with over 20 lots applied to it with a housing envelope that takes up the entire lot, that is 100% against what this community wants. So I will not be supporting this moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Logans. Councillor Beddoes, I believe, was next.
Yeah, I too have a lot of problems with the 27. Again, if it was heard that 16 they could do now, even have a bit of a problem with 16. Again, the setback of 3 meters, unacceptable. I agree there. And the reasoning behind that, it just blows me away. And the other thing is, when you do the 27 times 3, that comes to 81 cars, an extra, and our infrastructure is stretched to the max as it is. The last thing I'd like to do is, I was by there today, just on the road, but I would like to walk the property, and before I would make any decision on this property at all. So I could not agree for this to go forward at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. Other Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I'm basically in agreement with everything that my fellow councillors have said. Staff had asked for 5 meters and then accepted the 3. I don't think that we should be doing that. I think we should be taking what we should have and keep the trees there. I agree that cash in lieu for providing a multi-use pathway is not acceptable. We should actually have the pathway built for us, because we never get pathways built. We put the money into a fund and then we see no sidewalks, we see no trails, we see no pathways. So I think that we should actually, when we do the developments, not make the option of this, but actually get something built for us. And I've always said that I do not like secondary suites or small suites on lots with in all our lots. So if you have your 27 lots there, you have 54 homes with suites. And then if everybody has 3 cars, that's 162 cars that are coming out onto the roadway right there. And that would not be acceptable for that area. I understand from reading the notes that they bought into the sewer system quite some time ago at the inception, and it was for 20 units on the lot. So I'm not sure where the numbers are coming from that is now out there. And cash in lieu for affordable housing at $1,000, that's pretty minimal as well. And I think that when we do a development like this, we do need the parkland. We need to have a play area for the children that will be living there. The distance to be able to go to a play area is too far for anybody to walk to if you have little ones. So I think these are all necessities that we need when we are building our developments within our town. And we should be asking for what we need in our town.
Other comments by members of council? Councillor Bateman.
Okay, I was going to get into the pulpit tonight, but I don't think it's necessary given what we've heard so far. This is clearly, I just want to reread what I read at the Woodlands Road hearing, which is page 156 from the Local Government in British Columbia UBCM Handbook. And this regards best practices with land use regulation. And the 3 principles are greater certainty about the future, and this is for the people who are living in the area. This is why zoning is created, to give the landowners of the area greater certainty, avoiding negative external effects, and we heard that at the outset in the public hearing, and to the creation of adequate infrastructure for new developments with corresponding planning, zoning, and subdivision control. So I think the district has that under control. However, it's the maintenance of the greater certainty. We have, I want to bring in some context here, that in the district at the moment we have at least 1,300 homes that are ready to be built in the community already. And so to add another, in this case, 27 to the mix, we've got to look at, let's figure out those numbers with some suites attached as well. So, and this does not include zoning that has yet to come before us. In this case, perhaps, I'm not clear, but are 16 to 20 homes to be allowed on this property, or we will go through another process? No. This is permitted as it is. So We also have this issue that Councillor St. Pierre raised initially around the amenity contribution policies, repealed in May 2017, the existing one from 2010, and I think we're in the process of working towards actually establishing this situation which will determine what cash in lieu really means. As it stands, this developer would be contributing 55 meters of multi-use trail along Otter Point Road, 2 meters wide. The Housing Reserve Fund, as has been stated, $1,000 per home. This seems to be the standard donation by the developer. At the Woodlands property, that's also what we're receiving, $1,000 per each of the 5 homes that will be going there. And and the 3 meter wide. Yeah, everyone said what needs saying. I'm curious. I think this idea of first and second reading that then allows a public hearing is a really logical way to go ahead. However, at the same time, it sounds like we're not going to get there tonight on this particular one. Thank you.
Head of Planning, please. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council, for pointing out some things that we staff agree that there is some strengthening needing in our policies, and we're working with Councillor Logans with the Housing Committee to hopefully institute those changes in the new year. As it stands now, the policies are somewhat vague when it comes to the cash in lieu option, and since over the years the development industry has seen contributions of a certain amount, it's very difficult for us to be in a position to require more, although there are covenants registered in some of our CD zones that require substantially more, but that happened through the CD zoning development. I think having this conversation in this setting helps enable staff to push a little further. And I might suggest that maybe rather than this failing at first and second, that it be postponed so that it allows us time to go back and work with the applicant, potentially give them the opportunity to come forward with some different options to council. Something to think about. This area is well beyond the 30-meter setback from the creek. We have developments such as those in Sun River that are right along that edge. As staff, we were not worried about the salmon-bearing creek here at all. It is very close in walking distance to a transit station, and in staff's opinion, it is fairly contiguous with surrounding development. In fact, R2 is less than 100 meters away, and another strata subdivision happening in between those two areas, and R2 also boundaries the site as well. So this is not leapfrog development. It's not spot zoning. It's a subtle increase from one zone to the next zone up. I know it may seem drastic going from 2 homes to potentially 27. And again, that's a concept. This is land. We're talking about zoning. Again, if we postpone this and allow us to work further with the applicant, maybe they reconsider those numbers. I'm not sure. But clearly the 16 lots was not something that they thought was viable.
Thank you very much, staff, and I appreciate your work in doing this and in all the presentations and trying to bring something forward. So I totally get the context and also just what you're working with. I agree with my councillors, though. Like, it just feels like the wrong density in that area. It does, and it's also like, are we approving the supply that we need? You know, like, we've done very well with homes with suites, but they're expensive and people are priced out. And I sort of hear that many people are just living in the wrong type of house. Anyone that wants to upsize can't afford to. Anyone that wants to downsize can't afford to. And then it's like 2-story homes with suites is all over the place. And in times of affordability, which speaks to the work that Councillor Logans is doing, it's just, again, it's the wrong supply that's coming on. If the ALC is recommending a 5-meter buffer, then do the 5-meter buffer. And a fence to protect the neighbor. Like, it's best practice, and I think that's, it's an established farm that's in operation. I think if it was the case of like an idle, maybe, okay, this area hasn't been used, it's just sitting there, yes, it's zone farm, but in this case, it's a producing farm. And so I think in that case, I'd like to see an effort to not just meet, but let's actually surpass what's being stated in terms of best practice. I agree with Councillor Parkinson with the green space. Again, families then would need to drive to another area to have their kids play, or walk or drive their dog to another place, because often people have dogs and they just need an area to go out and about. But it doesn't exist because it's not provided, and you wouldn't be able to use the buffer space at the back. So there's just some things that when you're trying to, like, the traffic in Sooke is really busy. We all hear that. Otter Point is getting busier. So traffic now is spilling down over onto Helgeson and then coming down Church Road, which is making those areas busier. Perhaps if people are trying to avoid the core when they're commuting in, they're finding other areas. And that makes those particular areas just more and more difficult to navigate should anyone choose to walk or cycle. But it's not encouraging those activities that we want to see. And I agree there where it's timely that we do need to see things built for us, because it's getting expensive, and this means that the municipality now has to find the funds to either build out something, which sometimes doesn't happen because it's too expensive, or it just sits in a pot and we wait and wait. So I know that staff is working with what we have, but I think this is a helpful discussion in terms of what council will be looking for in rezoning in the future, coming out of the SHREP work that I know many councillors participated in. I was only there for the entry, but you are getting a sense even of what our community is expecting within the core, what they want to see in the core of Sooke. And that's where it's just finding a different way to move forward. So I won't repeat. There's been a lot of really good points made by members of council, but I think at this point I would, in terms of process, is to not defeat this, but if you want to take it back to the developer and share the comments that are heard, see if there's something workable, and I would say just work with the zone that you have. You have the sewer capability for those lots. The suites are already approved. The zoning's in place there. I don't know, just some thoughts. Anything else from anyone else? Councillor St. Pierre?
Through your worship, I also think that there's room for us potentially to do exactly what our head planner has suggested, which is to actually work with the developers. I think that if we work with the developers, we could potentially have something that's actually more marketable, potentially more profitable, but not necessarily the cookie-cutter approach that's killing us. And we certainly need some creativity and some new options, and I think that our planning staff could probably really help out with that. I would totally be in favor of seeing what could be brought to the table.
Councillor Logan?
I'm not in favor with that, and the reason being is because I think the current zone is an opportunity for us, for our staff to work with the developer. I don't think it's necessary to rezone this property and achieve over and above 20 lots on this land.
Okay, so at this point then, in terms of process to our corporate officer, if council, just moving first and second for the sake of defeating it seems a bit, I'm not seeing support for first and second reading, so what action?
Yeah. Well, I think your options are either to postpone first and second if you would like the planning staff to work with the developer and bring something back. But if you are not in favor of up zoning or down zoning, whatever you want to call it, from R1 to R2, then I think you need to put first reading on the table and vote accordingly. And then either it moves forward to second reading or it's defeated and the applicant is left with the R1 zone.
Okay. Okay, we have a mover. Councillor Logans is moving first reading. Is there a seconded by Councillor McMath? Anything further to be said? There was a question if the applicant could speak to or add to the presentation. We normally do that during a public hearing process where we get the staff report and then the applicant would speak at that point before we go into public hearing and then would comment. I haven't really done it in this setting before.
Well, I guess given what council may be considering next, it's council's prerogative to invite the developer forward and ask them what they might be willing to entertain.
Even with the motion on the floor already?
I think we can just suspend the motion and then make a motion to hear from the applicant.
Okay, so I'll suspend this motion. Should council like to hear from the applicant at this point?
Through your worship, if the applicant wishes to speak, I would like to hear what they have to say.
Okay, seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Would the applicant like to come forward and introduce and make any comment? And I'll just need you to turn on the microphone and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Dale Douglas with McElhaney, here with my one of our other partners, Dave Smith, as well at the back, one of our planners. We're representing the ownership group and the developer that's working on the project. We certainly can't commit them to anything. We came tonight to listen and take notes and hear what council had to say and interaction with the staff. I mean, they would like to develop the project, obviously in partnership with the District of Sooke, something that is going to work. We would like an opportunity to go back and talk with staff outside of this meeting once we've had a chance to digest all the comments. Some of the comments, it's hard to, really figure out the full impact while we're sitting here in the hall and without getting in front of a computer and starting to understand the change in density and how different things impact with the buffers and things like that. I would say just a couple of sort of philosophical things. The building envelopes that are shown on the plan, of course, with the site coverage, they're not going to be clear-cut. They're just an area as to where you could locate a house within there, and it does look pretty dramatic when you see the entire building envelope drawn out, but the house would not take that type of coverage. The 3-meter buffer, yeah, I realize there's a few comments around the reasoning for changing it. We're trying to work through what we think was a workable development within the economics. That's how we came to the 3 meters. We talked with the District of Sooke about it. It wasn't trying to fly in the face of environmental stewardship and things like that. It wasn't the reasoning behind it. We were more about the geometry of the lots. We wanted to see whether or not that was a possibility or an opportunity. Affordable housing isn't a number that we came up with. That's the number that we were directed would be the contribution that was required. In addition, with the pathway, we'd be more than happy to build the pathway on Otter Point Road, but policy right now is to collect those into a fund, and I suppose when you have enough money in there to build it in its entirety or a bigger piece, but once again, it's not something we're opposed to doing. We'd be more than happy to build it. The direction we have right now, though, is cash in lieu, and it's the same direction on the parkland. We're not stipulating, what the District of Sooke wants. We're just responding to that. I would just add that, we've had great contributions, though, from staff in helping us put together and work through getting to first reading to get the comments back from staff, council, and also hear from the general public for the first time. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. The work that staff did, and to listen to the general public and in particular mayor and council. So if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer, but I think that's an overview of how we got to where we're at. But we would like an opportunity to, once we've thought this through, to sit down back with staff again. So I'm not sure what the process is with that, with first and second existing zoning or whatever. I mean, obviously that's something you're going to decide, but I think it's worth us having another opportunity with staff to discuss.
Okay. Well, I think either way, like first reading is on the floor, and I don't want to assume anything, but it doesn't seem like it'll pass to me.
I kind of got that indication.
I'm not seeing much support.
Yeah.
But in which case, it always opens the door for you to go back to meet with staff to take in collectively what everyone has said and to see then would you want to then consider how you would develop the lot in its current zone, what to development permit and all that stage look like, even then hearing now what council is looking for, or, would you then want to pursue
a different type of rezoning possibly.
Yeah, the rezone with a different sort of plan with different whatever. Right. So I would always encourage you to go back to talk to staff and say, okay, here's, council now has had this opportunity to weigh in. Here's what they're saying. What can we work out? So I would encourage that.
Great.
In either case, and then it's up to the owners to pursue something within the existing zone or to change it again. But at least you have some context now on what council will look for.
Right.
coming forward again.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much for coming forward. Okay, so I'll reinvigorate the motion that was, whatever it was, that's sitting.
If I may, Your Worship. So yes, we're sitting with contemplation of first reading. So I think that Council has two options. Either if it's defeated, then the applicant has to wait 6 months before they can come back with an application, or they have to come back with a completely different, they can't come back with an R2 zone if memory serves under our policies. Or they could pass it at first, and it can sit at first. Staff can work with the applicant, and then it could come back for second reading with a revised plan, and then council could call it to a public hearing at that point.
I see.
So I just wanted to give you your options.
Does everyone understand that? So we have first reading on the floor right now, and if it's defeated, then the applicant would not come back with an application for at least 6 months, but could still meet with staff to determine what said future application might look like. If it passes, then staff will be looking to see how could criteria or what public and council expectation be met when it returns its second reading. Okay? Does everyone get that? Okay. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor of first? Oh. I just called the question, so you're voting. Okay. You have to vote now. You have to vote. Okay, so we'll do this again. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, it's unanimously defeated. So in this case, I would encourage the applicant to connect with staff, and then in 6 months' time, another application could come forward. Okay? Thank you, everyone, for your work on that. Next item is 10.3. I think some people are leaving, so I'm just going to propose a quick health break. Okay, everyone, welcome back. We're moving on to 10.3, please, and that is the zoning amendment bylaw number 726. So I will turn this over to our staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. So on the screen is a snapshot of a portion of the official community plan land use map. The OCP amendment that was adopted on October 1st impacts the orange area shown on the map, which is known as the Gateway Residential Land Use Designation Area. Oh, it's orange on the hard copy, sorry. It's yellow on the PDF. When you print it, it's orange. Okay. So these are the text amendments that were made on October 1st. The approved amendments allowed for temporary use permits on residential lands for historic non-residential uses. The amendment also included the addition of an action item for the Gateway residential area to review the need for a highway commercial land use designation adjacent to Highway 14 to accommodate historic uses. Council defined by resolution historic non-conforming as a use that has continuously operated in the same property since January 1st, 2010 or earlier. So how do temporary use permits work? A temporary use permit may be granted for up to 3 years with one renewal for additional 3 years. At council's discretion, they may choose to grant it for less than that time if they wish. A temporary use permit may also include conditions such as, but not limited to, is the aesthetic of the site, operating hours, and buffering from adjacent neighbors. It may not include the new construction of permanent structures. The purpose of the OCP amendment on October 1st was to allow council more time to strategically assess the Gateway residential area through a full OCB review in 2019. In the meantime, possibly permit through temporary use permit the legal continuation of non-conforming uses. So why are we here? Once the OCP amendment was adopted on October 1st, it initiated the necessity to update the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw is the implementation tool used to action the policies and visions of the official community plan. Therefore, they must not be in conflict with one another. Bylaw 726, the bylaw before you today, is a minor text amendment to Part 3 General Regulations section of the zoning bylaw. It proposes to add wording to the section that speaks to temporary use permits in order for the zoning bylaw to properly align with the OCP. It's simply repeating wording already adopted in the OCP. If the text amendment were to fail today or later at a public hearing, staff must bring forward a bylaw to repeal OCP Amendment Bylaw 724 for council consideration. On the other hand, if the text amendment were to be adopted after a public hearing, a temporary use permit application would be submitted by Mr. Drivers and to council through a public process, and council then could discuss issues specific to that site and determine if they support its operations for a temporary period of time. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. So just to clarify that, a couple of things. So the OCP amendment was done because prior to that, no business could apply for a temporary use permit. So when we did that, that was to allow any business with a historic use to apply for a temporary use permit.
Through your worship, in the Gateway Residential,
on
residential lands.
Right. And then in terms of why didn't one company choose to rezone, it was because the OCP prohibits that particular use in that area. So rezoning was not possible. And that's why Council of the Day said, okay, now that we have to go through this whole OCP, we'll go out to public consultation and see what we'd like to see along that highway use area, and then determine if rezoning is possible. So that's where it was the timing thing. Have we had already adopted an OCP, that consultation may have occurred to see what would have been appropriate. Some have said, oh, you should move to another area, but my understanding is other areas like in Kaltassin, the use is not allowed within the OCP right now anyway, so it wouldn't. The rezoning was not possible, and that's what's led to this long particular process. So that sort of concluded in October 1st, and now this is just the follow-up tool so that the two are in compliance. So if we don't move this forward, then we have to unwind the other. We would have to unwind everything And if we do persist, then, as you stated, then a temporary use permit could be applied through a public process before council. Okay. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, so Gateway Residential's intent is to have low-density residential growth along with small-scale commercial development, low-density infill. The designation is meant to preserve the mixed residential and rural character of the area. It is not meant to have light industry or heavy commercial use there. The temporary use permit for historic non-resident uses on rural residential properties is not a minor text amendment, as it affects the properties all the way from Roche Cove to the Sooke Bridge. I think this is a major decision to make for a large piece of land. Half of Sooke is all encompassed in this, and I think that the OCP amendment was initiated as a result of a pre-existing non-conforming use. So for me, that is not a valid reason.
Okay. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I'm just curious about this whole nature of the 900 homes and this whole gateway zone being able to make these amendments. I thought this was strictly applicable to non-conforming businesses in the area. Through you, Your Worship, could the Director of Planning, Head of Planning, or Carolyn?
Through Your Worship. Yes, this can't be applied for by all 900 properties. It could only be applied for where there is a non-conforming use that has history in Sooke and has been in place since prior to 2010. So even if one opened tomorrow and then came and pled to council next June, while I've been operating for 8 months, 6 months, that wouldn't comply. So they have to have been in operation for 8+ years to be able to come forward to apply for that temporary use permit.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Logans, then St. Pierre.
Oh boy, thank you. I struggle with this one quite a lot because it's not as if it was this previous government that imposed this on us years ago. It literally happened a couple of months ago, and it was a fully engaged, years-long struggle by council and the applicant, and hours-long public engagement, again, just a couple of months ago. What the community determined at that time didn't go in my favor because I did vote against it, but it was a fulsome process and it was a fair process. If people are concerned about the temporary use permit for a specific business, there will be a chance to speak to it and provide parameters for it at a later date. So what I would like to do is see those parameters set so that we can apply them and we have the chance to move forward. What happened during the very last meeting of the last council was an impossible situation, and would I like an opportunity to go back in time and have the motion fail? Perhaps. I did vote against it, and it was a very close motion, but that's not how we're going to move forward here. I'm not sure what council would think to do if we just decided to vote against the text amendment and repeal all of the work that was done. That's not going to move us in a positive direction. I think what will move us in a positive direction as a community is to work with the work that was done in the past and allow those permits to come forward to council so that we can work with all of the applicants, get an understanding of what's happening, not just on one property, but on several, and apply the different parameters that are necessary for each one.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Logans. Councillor St. Pierre.
I've also struggled with this because I really feel that a strong local economy is what we need to save us. We need jobs in Sooke. We need a diversified economy. I think that Mr. Driver is actually providing a piece of that, so I struggle with this as well. However, this is a new council with a lot of new faces, and part of that reason is that we got a strong mandate for voters to make change. And I think that part of that has to be doing what's right for Sooke, not just what's right for one particular individual. I do believe that in order to have a good business climate, people have to know what they're getting into. There has to be fair treatment across the board. I don't actually know that this is what's happening here. One of the issues that I'm dealing with right now is that I received a huge amount of information around 4 o'clock today. I mean, upwards of 40 to 50 pages of legalese around this. I don't actually feel like I understand this stuff. I don't believe it's the role of council to be amateur planners, bylaw enforcement officers, or legal experts. That's absurd. I like that word. Anyway, I think that we have to abide by the OCP. We have to look at the will of the community. We have to do what we can to make that work. We're here to represent the community with our values. Hopefully the community voted for us because they liked our values, what they thought we could bring to the table. I think it's all fine and well to look at all this legalese, but at the end of the day, what do we actually want in the future for the community? I want to see a strong local economy. I don't think that includes actually making all kinds of weird changes all over the place, creating strange loopholes, and we've already wasted a huge amount of time on an amendment. Now we're actually continuing that wasted time with this stuff. And I have no idea how much more we're going to waste on temporary use permits, figuring what they're going to do, what they might do in the future in that area. We are wasting staff time and resources. We're wasting our own time on this. Why are we not able to simply say, okay, fix it up, or we'll cease and desist you, and then we'll keep on increasing fines? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is complete nonsense. But right now, I don't feel like I'm ready to make a decision today regardless, because there was too much information placed on us too late in the game.
So just a comment where you said to fix it up, that's not possible. So it's one or the other, right? Like this would, temporary use and the path that this is on at the moment would lead to is a path to compliance. So you could argue like, well, you should relocate his business or this person should those, but you can't. Those lands, other lands within that area do not have that as a permitted option. It's zoned as gateway residential, so it could be a house only. And so that's where we have a challenge in a town like ours, is that where does industry locate? This was a challenge, and one of the earlier speakers mentioned other businesses, because the zoning in the current OCP as it stood did not allow for those uses. So we have no industry in Sooke, and to be a complete economy, we need industry in Sooke. So it isn't just one or the other. It would be the case of what would that look like, and then do through fulsome community engagement. Now, since 10 years since the last OCP was updated, we're realizing that there are some problems with that document, and we have neglected to include industry in this, and how do we move forward that way if we want to be a complete community? So we could do that through greater outreach, but in the meantime, how do businesses prevail in that climate? So then it would go to others. Well, they shut down. That would be, that is ultimately now up to council. Just for myself, I'm not prepared to shut down a business when we need one, and to put both that business and the others that rely on it all out of work and on the road commuting to another town. And you can argue, oh, is this one business owner's fault? For 20 years, though. There's been a business operating, employing, and is part of the community fabric here. So that's just where I'm sitting. I know that this has been debated, and that I'm speaking out of context into what's in front of us, but it's all sort of meshing together right now. But I think it's the case where we say, oh, we want you to clean up your property. Well, you can't, because we have to create that avenue and that pathway for that to happen. Hope that helps. Councillor McMath.
Stole my words. I just had a question through you to Bylaw about the mention that there's a bylaw order on the property right now for the removal of a live-in trailer, and I was just looking for an update on that.
Through your worship, there is not an order to remove the recreational vehicle. The direction was to cease residential use of the recreational vehicle. So people are entitled to have a recreational vehicle on their property, and it's what they do with that RV is the issue.
So you've just asked them to no longer live in it?
That's correct.
And has that been complied with?
An inspection of the property hasn't been conducted. My understanding is that the residential use has ceased, but that hasn't been confirmed by a site visit yet.
A follow-up by Councillor St. Pierre, then I'll go to Councillor Beddoes, please.
I feel that it's unfortunate that we don't have an industrial park for Mr. Driver to move into. I also think it's unfortunate that our industrial taxes are so high that he may have felt more comfortable going the route he did. He's known for a long time that this should be addressed. We've known for a long time this should be addressed. I think that it would have been more useful to have an OCP amendment to make Kaltassin into an industrial park and ask for public consultation on that one. I don't know that anyone is going to agree to have industry where he's located right now. I hope that he actually maintains his car business. I hope that he maintains commercial, because that's actually acceptable. I hope that he doesn't go out of business. But since ultimately we're not going to let him do industry there, I don't think. Why are we beating around the bush? I don't get it. Noob councillor, sorry.
Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, it's another one that I struggle with a great deal. Again, Councillor St. Pierre, we were dumped on. We asked for some legal opinions, and we asked a bunch of stuff, and man, it all came in today, and it was a lot to digest, and a lot more coming from the public. I really struggle with this one. Again, it was stated that the previous council, whether you like it or not, was sort of the law of the land at the time, and they did wrestle with the same questions, and it was passed. Not by much, but it was passed. And I'm a little bit loath to go back in time and redo things because I didn't particularly like that particular council's motion. But to move forward, and if we move it forward and this temporary commercial industrial use permit comes forward, I'm not so sure it would be in an acceptable manner, understanding what Mr. Driver, his business is down there. And I look at 6.0 and to do with temporary commercial industrial use permits. In consideration of the assurance of a temporary use permit, council shall be satisfied that the temporary use does not adversely affect adjacent or surrounding properties in terms of pollution, odor, noise, light, traffic, viewscapes, parking, and loading. I've heard from neighbors quite a bit. If we do proceed with it, I'm not so sure it's going to get to the next ground anyways, and then we're, again, back to square one again. I would really love to accommodate Mr. Driver. He certainly has a business that is needed in Sooke. But, again, we're looking at a whole gateway, and not just one. We're looking at a whole section of Sooke. So I'm struggling with it, but I just wanted to say that, in considering with 6.0, that the neighbors sort of have to be on side, I don't see it happening. So just my 2 bits.
Councillor Logans.
So here, I'm trying to hopefully lead us down a path that will show the light at the end of the tunnel, because the way I see this happening is that basically we're not beating around the bush. This is a situation where we're moving towards a solution that can be set in stone. So right now, we've been beating around the bush for 20 years on this. The bush has been beaten and there's none of it left. So if we are able to move forward with this and issue a temporary use permit, we can put the parameters on it. Let's say, okay, we want industrial business out of that zone in 2 years. So any industrial business that comes forward with a temp permit, we can say you have 2 years to find a new property. That's a thing that we could attach to that permit if we wanted to. If that were the case, then council would have 2 years to find industrial land and zone for it appropriately. Potentially, hopefully, that could happen. And then in that case, if, as Councillor Beddoes mentioned, if it's not complied with, then there's actually a legal framework that we can work around. Because right now, the situation we're in is we couldn't figure out who had done what and said what and been where. And with a temporary permit, if the infractions are made against the permit, then the permit gets taken away, the business is illegal, right? So it 1 + 1 = 2, and that's where I see this going.
Thank you, Councillor Logans. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, my turn. So I struggle with this too. Of course, the whole community is struggling with this. It's a legacy of the way it was, and we're trying to get to the place of where we will be acting as a mature community moving forward. I was really inspired to reread the mayor's inaugural address from our opening meeting here of this new era council, quote unquote. The impactful decisions await us, the hiring of a new CAO to lead us and guide our direct municipal operations, managing the impacts of growth, compliance issues, long-range planning, and a key line here, bylaws and policies all need to be refreshed and in some cases thrown out and replaced. So that is the mandate moving forward, and here we are dealing with a very much a site-specific issue that reflects a larger, ongoing, I don't know what. The key point here is that I do respect our planning staff, and they have come up with, and I respect Councillor Logan's for her very clear, clean statements about how we can move forward with this. Quote unquote, further discussion could occur in the format of a public hearing and allow Council additional time to become more familiar with process and history. So this seems like the next move forward in the chess game that is unfolding here. I would also agree with Mr. Councillor St. Pierre. We received supplementary information just today from Ms. Smith and Mr. Lewers and the legal opinions. Very overwhelming for me personally. I find this, it's beyond the pay grade, I think, as it might be described. Are you asking for a raise? No, I'm not asking for a raise at this point. I got free coffee as part of the deal. So I was thinking we might want to again defer consideration until I heard Councillor Logan's. She's made some very good points, and we need to perhaps honor that previous council's 4-3 decision. It will now take us forward once the applicant, Mr. Drivers, brings forward his application. We will have a public hearing, and we can do it all over again, but this time we get to marinate in a process, and hopefully, so that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bateman. Councillor St. Pierre. So did you have your hand up? No, you're good. Okay.
I found that Councillor Logan's explanation of the use of the temporary use permit very useful. I just have one caveat that I'm really worried about, and that's that given that we're actually creating new rules for reasons that we can't get compliance, what's the result of non-compliance? Are we looking directly at a cease and desist at that point, or? Removal of permit. No permit. Okay, well, no permit doesn't mean anything because we're still in a situation where we can't get them to comply.
So then it was articulated that
we're back to square one for real.
No, because then should anyone in that area choose not to come forward for a temporary use permit now that they can, or should this pass now that they would be able to, then it's the case where the district can say, look, we've provided this avenue, you need to cease and desist operations.
Okay, so we are looking at a cease and desist if we have non-compliance.
Well, if there's no permit, then yes.
But we could do that right now, so help me out.
But he can't. So nobody in that area with historic, because there's more than one, that, it's the case, do you want some industry, we have been trying to say, now I'm not even making sense. A year ago, yes. Council issued a business license, and then determined that we could not do that, and then found out, actually no one can issue this business license because the property isn't in compliance. It always seemed that there was a desire by the owner to come into compliance.
That's important.
Okay, so then it was the case, well, why don't we rezone? Well, we can't rezone because that zone is prohibited by the OCP. So then it's the case of, we have to do the OCP because there's other conflicts with land use in other areas. For example, where does industrial use go? How do we define it? What does it look like? We hear we need more of it. We don't have any of it. So knowing that the OCP was budgeted to start off in 2019 and could be up to 2-year process from start to finish, It was the case of, okay, well, should business owners have the ability to then apply for a temporary use permit, then they can bring themselves into compliance. In the meantime, we can see the community as a whole. What do we need to do in our community, and how do we want it to grow and shape and look? So it provides that avenue. It always seemed, and you'll see in the documentation, there has been a desire for compliance to come forward. That's what sparked the whole thing in the first place. It was this case, the applicant, Mr. Driver, came before council and said, here's a vision of what he wants to do with his lands. So, but then it's the case of our OCP, our zoning, prohibiting that ability in those particular areas. So when you say go to Keltassin, you cannot go to Keltassin because the OCP does not allow that use in that area. Mm-hmm. So that's where that's what has led us. And yes, it's sort of been this bouncing ball all the way there. So then in the case of now, if we do this and there is no temporary use permit, then it's okay. Look, there's an action here and you need to close shop because council has provided an avenue for you to come into compliance. And this is where the applicant would need to come forward, talk to staff, put together application, come and be heard by council. And should any of those compliance pieces not meet, then council has something, look, we granted this permit, these conditions have not been met, or we want these conditions to be met in order to grant you the permit, so forth.
Thank you.
Does that help? It does. And Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just want to ask staff a question here. On the, I understand it's a 3-year and a 3-year renewal, but that's really up to us, is it not? Well, I heard 2 and then I hear 3. The provincial government's now talking 3. Anyways, regardless of that, if it comes before us in a temporary use permit, can we not set a different time frame? We can say 1 year, 6 months, 3 days, whatever we want. It doesn't have to be 3 years, is that correct?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct.
3 years, sorry?
Through your worship, yes, you are correct.
Yeah. Maybe I didn't understand. But we can ask for less. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
We just can't ask for more than the 3 years, and it can only be renewed once.
Do you get it?
Yeah. Okay. Other questions or comments? And in terms having tons of legalese dumped on you, those all formed staff reports that we had received. It's just at one point, councillors had also asked for all the supporting background. So it wasn't that we got 50-page reports each time. There, you'll see, over time, any report, no time has staff ever given us a 50-page report to read. They're giving us their opinion in both the presentation and in a couple of pages. They're summarizing what they are receiving from either outside advice, solicitors, training organizations, and the like, and they're summarizing it for us. Just sometimes council asks, well, actually, I want all the background. I want all the appendices, all the reading material, and then it forms this big, long document. Right? So sometimes it's the summary, but sometimes we ask for more information to do a little more reading. Okay. Other comments or questions?
I just want to say one thing.
Go ahead, Councillor McMath.
I think from the people that are opposed to the temporary use permit, there's a fear that this will basically guarantee that they will be there forever. And I think you can tell from previous decisions even just made tonight that this council is absolutely about what's best for the community. And I think that this temporary use permit is a good way to satisfy both parties. I know there's so much history and a lot of emotion attached to it and frustration, but I think this will be the best path to have a reconciliation that will fit both sides and in a way that supports both.
And then through the temporary use process, any business owner then would have the ability to share what their vision is for the lands. And what would they do that? Or would it be more just look, here in the interim, I'm looking for a temporary use to do X. Is it also possible for them to share, this is what I want to move towards down the road, or how does it typically work?
Well, I suppose that would be possible, but technically a temporary use permit should be addressing what's existing.
Okay.
To allow what's existing. There's nothing and there's no policy that says they can't speak to future plans, but what you're approving through a temporary use permit is the temporary use of what's existing on site.
Right, and then they would be explaining what that existing is and how it's contained, how
Operating
it can be mitigated, operating hours, noise,
how they're
dust,
addressing
whatever.
any non-compliant issues, all of that, yes.
Okay. Ms. Machado?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to take an opportunity, and I don't know if it's going to be helpful or not, but just to remind Council on page 107 under option 1 that because the zoning bylaw is consistent with our now OCP, Council does have the authority to waive the public hearing for the zoning amendment. If you're concerned about dragging things on and wanting to bring forward the temporary use permit, that is an option for Council. I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Councillor Parkinson?
I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay. Okay, so at this point there is a recommendation, and that is that Council give first and second reading to Sooke's zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 726, 600-67, 2018, for the purposes of amending Part 3 General Regulations. Okay, Councillor Parkinson remembers what she's going to tell.
Through your worship, I would like to know how many businesses would be applying for a temporary use permit between Roche Cove and the bridge.
Through your worship, we do not know. The number of non-conforming uses in that area are observed and or anecdotal. There have been no formal complaints on others.
Okay, so I've read out what the recommendation is. Is there a mover for this? Councillor McMath has moved it. Councillor Logans has seconded it. Is that correct? Okay. Discussion on first and second reading. Okay, all those in favor of it? Opposed? Councillor Parkinson and St. Pierre are opposed, so the motion carries. And then the second part is that a public hearing scheduled for zoning amendment bylaw number 726, 600-67, 2018, in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act.
Remove recommendation, and my hands up.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson is... Go ahead.
No,
Oh, you're removing the recommendation.
Yes.
I thought you said remove. I was like,
Move. I move the recommendation.
Removing the recommendation.
I move the recommendation.
Oh, sorry. I thought I
You read
heard
it.
remove. I heard remove as well.
Did you remove?
Yeah,
Or did you?
definitely
I
said
removed.
yeah.
You're only taking it away.
Yeah, get rid of it. No. I move it.
Okay.
I only put
Moving.
my hand up because she wouldn't take my.
She moved it. Okay, I definitely heard remove, and that's what I thought just happened there. Okay, she's definitely moved it. Okay. Any further questions on the public hearing? So that would, sorry, Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, so to be clear, the non-conforming businesses in the gateway zone need to, at least one of them needs to make an application for temporary user permit
Only
prior to us knowing when we would be having this public hearing.
No, this has to be adopted first, and then said business
Oh,
and
I see.
others
Okay.
could apply for a temporary use. We have to create the path first.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And then when that's done, okay? Anything further? So this public hearing then would be first meeting in January?
Yes, January
Okay.
14th.
January 14th. Okay, it would be advertised as well. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for that.
I believe she said you didn't have
Okay.
a public hearing. Like you don't want to hear from the public? That would be like totally weird.
They'll all be back. Okay. 11.1, sidewalks, Otter Point to Hope Center Sidewalk Project. Mr. Hout.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. As you're aware, the sidewalk proposal or the sidewalk construction for on West Coast Road from Otter Point to Shields Road or just a little bit beyond there. It's been on the books for a little while now, and for other reasons it never got done. However, since I've been here, I've been in discussions with the MOT with regards to participation with regards to sidewalks on the West Coast Road, and we now have an opportunity to participate with the MOT with design and construction. The design would be from Otter Point Road, both sides to the west end of John Phillip Park. Ed McGregor Park, I'm sorry. It's been a long night, I apologize. To Ed McGregor Park, and it would be designed on both sides of the highway to that point. From that point on, it would be designed from Ed McGregor Park out to Brooks Road, only on one side. The estimated value for the design is $350,000. We are being asked to contribute $100,000 as our participation in the project. The MOT does not normally build sidewalks within their arterial highways. It's always in participation and in partnership with the local municipality. The total construction of the project to the west end of Ed McGregor Park is estimated to be $700,000. Our participation was pegged to be $350,000 originally, but in discussions with the MOT in recent days, we've agreed that we would be looking at $100,000 for our participation on the $700,000 for construction. And after that, then we would budget year after year for the sidewalk from the west end of Ed McGregor Park out to Brooks Road. So tonight I'm coming forward and asking for the budget transfer as per the report. So we have $100,000 for the design so the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure can continue their work for the design. And from that, I'll answer any questions that you may have about the west end of Ed McGregor Park and the sidewalk.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Howitt, for this. It's great to see some movement here. I'm just curious, like, our planning documents have, like, a certain type of design, width. We're looking for lighting features, the light posts, and some landscaping. How is that all going to be incorporated into the designing stage with the MOTI?
We have had two inaugural meetings with the MOTI. They have our documentation from the OCP,
okay,
which is the edict for our sidewalks. We are also going to be participating in the luminaires, in the ornamental luminaires with them. We may have to participate a little more in the second phase of it, but they're going to do all the duct work for us. That's part of the design and part of the original construction. There may be some compromises within the sidewalk, not the design so much, but on the width, because of pinch points within the right-of-way of the highway. They did not want to get into property acquisition issues. If there's an opportunity that we can obtain statutory rights-of-way at no cost to a property owner, we can look at that.
Okay.
But we're quite a ways away from that design because this is still in the infancy of the design program.
Okay, but then will they also take like our town center design guidelines and the like? Because all of that would cover off basically.
That's correct. They have all the documentation.
All of the documentation. Yeah. Okay. Just because like we've done it's been a great start within Sooke from like Church all the way over to Otter Point. So it'd be nice to see that theme continue along the highway until it hits a point where it makes more sense to sort of just move to like a trail perspective. Like at some point I think there'd be a transition because you're leaving the town center and maybe the width doesn't allow it, but you still need to have some form of, you know, character to the design that we've started.
Your Worship, what we're trying to do is have that same theme, if you will,
okay,
from Otter Point to the west end of Ed McGregor Park. There may be some pinch points, but the design parameters would still be that way. As we move out further west, then we would be looking at again, this is still in the dialogue stage. We could be looking at a conventional, concrete sidewalk, or we could be looking at a multi-use trail or something of that nature. But there are parameters that we have to look at going west. because of there's significant drainage concerns out there, et cetera. So
Yeah.
we're going to have to look at that, but we're quite a ways away from that. So.
Okay, because it's still just the planning, early phases. Okay. Councillor St. Pierre?
Just want to say thank you so much for sidewalks, potentially. That's kind of nice. The other thing I was wondering was, does anybody know just where the money's coming from? I'm assuming we're going to find it somewhere. I'm just curious.
Sprinkler fund.
Sprinkler fund.
If you look,
I did see that sprinkler fund. Right. Wow.
Thank you, Councillor Loggins.
Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, to staff, I was just to the chief. I was just curious if the sprinkler fund is not a requirement.
Your Worship, to Councillor Parkinson, this would not remove us from continuing to look down the pathway of resolving the problem with the non-compliance with the sprinkler system. I think it's a prudent thing to do because it's still going to take some time to actually get a full picture on the immense work that needs to be done with this sprinkler system, and the likely budget that we have in there right now is underfunded and inadequate.
Okay, the sprinklers have been sort of on table now for a long time, but I think it's just understanding the scope of what's involved to remediate. It's the sprinklers in here. Okay, Councillor McMahon.
I just wanted to know how much is in the entire sprinkler account right now.
Through your worship, there's $200,000 budgeted for this year.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, actually, $100,000 for a $700,000 project, I think that's great. If you go back and talk to them about an alternate route through Sooke and the same sort of funding, I'd be more than happy. But I support you. I think it's a good deal, and thanks very much for doing that.
Through your worship, there's ongoing dialogue that we have with the MOT about other or potential other endeavors right at the moment, because there is some funding available out there. What these other endeavors will be, it's a little too early to say, but hopefully we'll get some more work out here.
You can also share that we liked your earlier comment when you mentioned the sidewalks going from Otter Point to John Phillips. Councillor Logans.
Yeah, this is obviously wonderful because we've been waiting for it for a while, but I am concerned about how we would replenish the sprinkler fund, since we'll need the funding perhaps not next year, but I mean, we'll need it pretty quickly. And of course, we're not yet into the new financial plan, but I don't know what that might look like. Perhaps if our Director of Finance could give some insight into what might happen.
Through your worship, so the plan for the sprinkler fund was to use the capital asset replacement reserve, which is the reserve we fund all the additional amounts towards capital asset improvements. So that money usually comes from the non-market change each year. So whatever we can put in there, we put in there in the financial plan. And when I walk council through the budgeting process in January, I can explain all that. But the plan would be to have that fund replenished again for next year.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Bateman, go ahead.
Okay, my turn. Through you, Your Worship, I'm getting the hang of this now. To Mr. Howitt. You say the west end of Ed McGregor to Brooks Road. So is that on the ocean side? I know both sides up to Ed McGregor, and then as we go out to Brooks Road, that's on the south side.
Through your worship, at this point in time, it's unknown. That's part of the design cost will be looked at. As I said earlier, there are some parameters that need to be looked at just from a technical component, right, because there are some significant ditch issues on the north side.
There are.
But at this point in time, the preference would be the north side.
North side, okay. And of course, we have the boat trailer issue, and hopefully the Ministry of Transportation is aware of that on the south side leading to the Prestige, and we need to continue to find a solution. But, yeah.
Through your worship, the MOTI is more than aware the parking issue in that location. And while it has come up in staff discussion along with the sidewalk issue, there seems to be not a total aversion to deal with it, but they're not quite there yet. They know it's there, and they know they need to do something, but what that is, I do not know.
Okay, a third supplemental here. Earlier this week, or last week, Edward Milne, community school student, wrote a letter to the Pocket News, I think, bemoaning the state of sidewalks in Sooke. And I think, and it raises questions in my mind. Obviously, we have an annual sidewalk budget, I believe, of how much is that? A couple of $100,000? Yes, okay. And in terms of where that money is spent and do we have a policy in terms of, I'll cite the one I found from Colwood. New sidewalk locations are generally prioritized based on immediate proximity to schools and parks, to transit routes, density of land use in the area, that sort of thing. Do we have a particular policy in terms of where we plant our sidewalks?
We have the Trails and Parks Master Plan, okay, which identifies some of the sidewalks. But because our budgets have been fairly light over the years, we try to focus in on like the safe route to school type scenarios. And I know the students from Edward Milne approached Mayor and Council a couple of years ago with regards to sidewalks there. And I believe that the ministry, in their endeavor to upgrade Highway 14 in the intersection of Sooke River Road, they will be getting their sidewalks.
Yeah, so that's good news. Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor St. Pierre? Yep, turn on your microphone.
I'd like to move this motion.
Okay, so can we do these all together?
Okay.
Oh, we'll do them all in a block?
As a block? Do you want me to read
You're doing them all in a block?
Do you want me to read it out, or?
No, it's been moved and seconded now.
Perfect.
So why do we take the...
Okay, we'll read it out. That council approve a budget transfer of $100,000 from the building sprinkler account to the Otter Point to Hope Center sidewalks design account, and that council approve staff to enter into negotiations with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure for the district share of capital construction costs for the sidewalk project, and that council directs staff to include the district share of the capital construction costs in 2019 with the 2019 to 23 5-year financial plan. That's been moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. Anything further on the motion? Okay, I saw in media release that Sooke River Road is starting soon, so that's exciting. That's good. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, next one is the Parks and Trails Master Plan budget transfer. And who's speaking to this one? Councillor Parkinson.
Do you want staff to speak to it?
Well, this one is there not? The next item? Councillor.
Yep.
Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. This one's a housekeeping item. Originally, money was transferred out of the Whiff and Spit study account, but really that money was meant to be funded by grants, and we didn't apply for the grants, so there was no money to transfer. So that's correcting that, rescinding that motion and then just approving the transfer as written in the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson.
I move that council rescind motion 21018-510, approving a $25,000 capital budget transfer from the Whiff and Spit study account to the Parks and Trails Master Plan, and that council approve a capital budget transfer of $25,000 from the building sprinklers account to the Parks and Trails Master Plan, with the funding to come from the allocated transfer from the capital asset replacement reserve.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And the next one here is item 11.3, the wastewater treatment plant Biosolids upgrade project. Mr. Howitt.
Thank you, Your Worship. Probably good timing that this came forward, or has come forward now after council's or the new council members' tour of the plant. and hearing about the woes down at the plant from our operators down there. Anyway, the district's wastewater treatment plant requires a new centrifuge and related components, and at the end of this I will get into what the related components are. A 2018 budget of $750,000 for this project exists within the approved 2018 to 2022 five-year financial plan. Staff do not have the engineering expertise to design the project specifications required for the tender, nor do we have the expertise to oversee the installation. Stantec is the district's wastewater engineer and is best suited to project manage this responsibility. Staff have negotiated with Stantec an amount to be paid for the services and would like Council's approval to directly award this work. The district's purchasing policy 5.6, section 16.1 provides that when the compatibility of an item with existing equipment, facilities, or service is paramount, the Director of Finance may approve an exception to the district's quotation and bidding process. In this case, a direct award is recommended as Stantec has in-depth knowledge of our wastewater treatment plant and have been our engineer of record since the inception of the plant and the collection system. It is important to note that if there is a failure of the centrifuge, then trucking costs would greatly outweigh the potential of savings from going with an engineering firm that does not have intimate knowledge of the district's wastewater treatment system. Time is at the essence, and I think that message was put forward to the council members who were touring it a week or so ago. The system itself is 13 years old, and centrifuges don't have that kind of life expectancy. Our operators down there have done everything in their powers to keep it functioning. It is imperative that we move on this fairly quickly. And what we hope to do as well is after the new centrifuge goes in, and this was also a dialogue at the plant, is we will take that centrifuge that's there now when the new one comes in, and we'll have it retrofitted or revamped so it'll sit in stock. So if the other one ever goes down or has to come out for maintenance, that we have a backup. So we are looking for your support in this recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, the recommendation is so that Council authorize Stantec to design and project manage the district's wastewater treatment plant Biosolids upgrade project, that Council authorize the Mayor and CEO to enter into an agreement for the provision of the design and project management services to be delivered by Stantec, and that Council approve $120,000 plus GST to be funded from the Sewer Reserve Fund for the capital improvement design and project management costs. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor McMath. There's a special window, isn't there, that this needs to be done by? Like, I thought that we weren't able to do it because it has to be done a certain time of year, or am I thinking of something?
No, when the actual centrifuge, Your Worship, when the actual centrifuge arrives, that's where the window kicks in.
Okay.
It is in the low flow months.
Okay, so in the summertime.
In the
so
summertime, actually, probably be probably August, September, when the flows are significantly lower.
And that's still because we have stormwater entering into the system?
That's correct.
Okay, because otherwise the flows would be the same. Okay, anyway, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried unanimously. It would be interesting that once that all those water chambers are fixed, they're manholes. There must be a more politically correct word than that. That the catch basin things are collected to see if that has made an impact in resolving the water that's entering the system.
Yes, Your Worship. We were anticipating getting started on the fixing of the barrels, if you will. We wanted to do it before now. We have a contractor lined up. Unfortunately, with his timing and his wife just giving birth to another child, or their first child, has put it a little bit behind. So hopefully right in the new year we'll get started. We have, I believe it's 8 or 9 barrels identified that really need to be dealt with quickly. And once that's done, then we'll start our flow monitoring. It'll give us a better idea of exactly where we stand on capacities.
Okay, that's
great. Just add to that, Your Worship, we do have a $15,000 grant from UBCM as well to help us figure out where the problem is with the infiltration.
With the water infiltration. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Blackhall. Okay, so the next one is our regular council meeting schedule. So we adopt this calendar every year for the following year, and then it's sort of set in stone for the year. Special meetings, of course, can be called as needed throughout the year by myself, or there's a process for 2 members of council to do it. Councillor Logans?
2 things. One, I'd like to make a wager that we hold a regular council meeting on August 12th, 2019. That was a wager, not a motion, because it's happened every year for the past 2 or 3 years. Just being cheeky. But one, I was hoping that we could briefly discuss special meetings during budget time. Just what that might look like.
Oh, like how many or where or
just
when?
Just sort of what it looks like, because I know that we haven't gone through a budget cycle as a new council, and I'm sure like I'll have a lot of questions and others will have a lot of questions, so what that might, where, when, what we've done
Probably
in the past.
February, March. Expect at least 5 meetings and additional meetings. There's also community grant, receiving all the applications and those and the like. The strategic planning will kick off. There'll be a call for special meetings for that. So I would anticipate a lot of meetings at this point. I don't know what more to say. I have not seen that.
No, that's helpful. I was just hoping that we could have that, because I know it looks like, oh yeah, we just have a few meetings, but I don't want anyone to be shocked when budget time comes and community grants.
Realize that there's going to be a lot of meetings poked into these dates. So.
Yeah, because like the budget legally has to be adopted by May the 15th, which means first, second reading, all the public has to, like everything sort of backs up from that point. So I think usually it's about February, March.
Your Worship, as leadership, we've been talking about moving into budget, and so our finance department has been asked to host a session with council in January to review the budget process and hopefully answer a lot of those initial questions for particularly new council. And then we've also, Director of Finance has been asked to put together a schedule of anticipated dates for our budget process.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then, just in terms of August, I know that historically we've tried to take time off in July and August for many reasons, but we've also been really busy, and I know 2 years ago we had at least 2 meetings, I think, during August, and then last year we had one for sure. It may not be the place this year to stick it into this calendar, but I just see it getting busier and busier.
Well, I think it depends. Like last year, we also had challenges adding dates and more because quorum seemed to be a challenge. So then it's the case of having to call a special meeting because, there was those items along the way. We tend to not have all of our staff complement because they need the break. And then we didn't have, not even a full complement of council because people were on vacation and need a break. So I think you need to be able to plan something, but we'll deal with what emerges as is needed. To Carolyn, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. If memory serves, 2 summers ago or 2 years ago in 2017, have I been here that long? Sorry, the first summer that I was here, council hadn't scheduled any council meetings in the summer, and then there was the developer pressures because their applications weren't getting in front of council, so we ended up with those additional ones. So then last year we scheduled July meetings, no August, and ended up with one extra one, but I think I blame that one. We had only one meeting in September, October, October because of the election in UBCM. So we won't be facing that same pressure this year, so hopefully we can work it out.
So is the September date has shifted because of UBCM, or that's been incorporated into this calendar, right?
It has been because there's 5 Mondays in September, so we're still able to actually have 2 meetings in September.
Okay.
Just to follow up, we had the one in July and one in August, but then we had September 11th, 18th, then UBCM, then October 2nd, as well as.
But some of those
we had every week in October.
But they weren't regular meetings.
Right.
Those were special
and it was
meetings
just things
that were
had
added.
Popped up because there wasn't.
If I may, we were also trying to get our backlog of development applications through, so because we went for that period of time without any planners, which I think can attribute to a lot of those special meetings as well.
Yeah, it was just an exceptionally busy time.
So I would just recommend that we approve the meeting schedule as it's presented, and then just noting that we'll receive the schedule for strategic planning from our finance team. Yeah. Moved by Councillor Beddoes and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any discussion on it? Put it in your calendar. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. The acting mayor's schedule. So this is the schedule for the upcoming year. Does anyone have any known conflicts? Councillor St. Pierre.
No, I'm just going to move it.
Okay. Move to accept by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor McMath. Okay. I will be absent in January, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, right. So can you give me your do you know your dates yet when you're in Cambodia?
So just a heads up that January I'll be away. I'll be also away in February for a few days. March for FCM. Yeah, the advocacy day, like it's a mess.
So will I have to chair a meeting, I guess is my question.
I don't know yet. That's on a need-to-know basis.
So if I have to chair the hearing...
No, I will... You're going to go to Cambodia.
I've got 60 days to opt out, do I?
No. Just to put your mind... Just to put your mind at ease, I will be here for that meeting. Yes, to everyone's disappointment, your mayor will be here for it. Okay, calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Just don't remove me from any committees while I'm away. 12.1, AVICC resolution. So this is correspondence on how you may submit resolutions, and we do have one sort of pending, so we'll round that up, and then that can come forward for us to deliberate on in the first meeting in January. And if you think of anything else, that would be the time to start that. So I'll be looking for a motion to receive, please. And that is to receive the report on the AVIC's AVIC, resolutions for info. Councillor St. Pierre, and seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. R.C.M.P. monthly report for the month of October. Move receipt by Councillor Logans. Seconded by Councillor McMath. Any comments or questions? Yep. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. No new business that I am aware of. So we have correspondence here. Oh, sorry. 12.3. We're moving on.
Council resolutions.
Thank you. Council resolutions. So here, you may have known that I have asked staff to sort of provide a summary of what's occurring in their departments. And one of them was just to have a listing of outstanding resolutions. It's here for information. It's sort of a lot to go through. But it should be noted that only council can actually take something off the table. So I always find, like with the change in terms, sometimes as a housekeeping, there's resolutions that are active and they kind of disappear. And then they're like, we either have to follow through on them or we need to repeal them and clear them off. So they're just sort of here as a resource information for you right now. And then it can flow forward into strategic planning, and then we can resolve in terms of what's current and what isn't. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I was just curious, does parks fall under development services?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bateman.
Bateman. So we as a council will look closely at this list of ongoing priorities during our strategic review process, is that?
It's sort of just for you to have as a reference point, but yeah, I think
Okay.
that would be a good time to sort of
Yeah.
have it as reference going forward. Some of them are obviously still in the works because there's time and work happening with staff behind it. It's just the report came available, so it was a case of, okay, I'll send it to council so they can receive it publicly, and then you sort of have it on a go-forward basis. Okay?
And in terms of, it'd be interesting to see if staff was to put these into priorities, because obviously there's to-do lists and there's lesser and greater priorities, and I see a few priorities here, if you don't mind me saying. The DCC program for stormwater management, the sewer service area report, provisions of the main road contract. So there seem to be a few things that we need to sink our limited time and energy into, and I'm sure staff would be in better position to identify those, or we'll do that during the strategic review.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, so a motion to receive, please. Moved by Councillor Beto, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Correspondence. There was a letter and a comment earlier just on from Ms. McLeod on wildlife feeders. I thought that you could feed the birds.
Sorry, Your Worship. There has been some communication and clarification provided through there, and I just think there might be a misunderstanding. The part of the bylaw, it says, with the exception of bird feeders, thou shalt not feed the wildlife. So that part is permitted, and I think there's just a misunderstanding that we've tried to correct. But
okay. Is there a way of communicating back to the member of the public just to clarify that, because she did leave after her submission today? So okay, so the way we can do this is we can receive all the correspondence, and then after that we can discuss any of them individually. So I'm looking for a motion to receive the correspondence from November 21st to December 5th to be received and filed accordingly for the record. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. All those in favor of receipt? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And now which ones, just for any discussion? Councillor Parkinson.
A, C, E, I, and
Okay, it'll be easier if we just scroll through them because I can't jump to them. So A would be...
the one for McRoads for Lot A.
Okay.
I was just curious as to whether you and staff have had a discussion of the idea with the owners of Mariners Village.
About his ideas in particular?
Like about purchasing property over there.
Have not talked to the developer about buying land.
Okay, thank you.
No. About buying the land, no. But I've talked about the land with the developer.
Correct.
Right.
No, but he was asking whether for a land swap or having parkland over there. I was just wondering if there was any discussion in regards to that.
No.
And if not, that's fine.
Okay.
Yep. And then the other one is...
Sorry, Councillor Bateman, do you have one on
Yeah, just to
A?
follow up on that, I believe there has been some conversations. I'd like to, through you, Your Worship, ask the head planner about, you've had some conversations, I believe, with the Rowanwood people. And could you give us a sense of their particular attitude moving forward?
I don't think you can discuss that at this time because there's no application before us, right? And like land purchasing is an in-camera decision anyway. I mean, I did say that.
I can tell you we've had pre-application meetings with them about their proposals. Yeah.
And I suppose this freedom of information in the package is indicative of what you've been talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
Because this includes page 225 to 227 are notes from meetings. 225?
It's just
So
notes that have been. Yeah.
From pre-application meetings, discussions, and they've asked what would we be willing to support on that site in terms of uses. They're looking for anchors. There's never been any discussion formally about land swap, and if any of that has come up, I've always said to talk to council about that.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just scrolling through this, Councillor.
See, which was the orange taxi.
Okay.
So I wasn't on council at this time, but it says on here that council passed a motion requesting no more cabs in town. Is that still a policy? From my understanding, a lot of people require cabs, and it appears that you can't get them too readily.
So what I understood from that at that time, it was something that it was something about a Victoria-based company having the ability to come out here, and then the council of the day said no to that. But yeah, I mean, if Orange Taxi wasn't operating, we wouldn't have any taxi service at all in town. And even still, if you need just like a ride to the airport, sometimes it's easier, I've heard, to get a cab that's based in Victoria so they don't have to charge you both ways.
So we would still allow, if someone came and wanted to open up a cab shop, that would be okay.
Well, in this case for Orange Taxi, I just wrote a letter of support, and it never seemed they managed to get their license. Okay. But I think this is one that we should actually look into, is pull this. Mr. Blackhall?
Thank you, Your Worship. As in the CAO role, we receive from the PT, anyway, Passenger Transportation something board, the application from, say, Orange Taxi or West Shore, whoever, right? And just that they want to offer more service in Sooke. Do we have any concerns? So we get those all the time. Yep.
Thank you.
Just a point, Sooke Harbor Taxi's back in service.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
About a half-page ad to follow.
Okay. Okay. Other items?
Number E was the email from Susan Cromwell for Sun River speed limits.
Yes.
So my concern is that when you enter into Sun River, it says that the posted kilometers is 30. And then when you go through it, it says that it is 40.
It's actually, well, what it is that the playgrounds and there's 2 playground roads on Sun River Way that have 30, but otherwise it's posted 40, and that was a reduction from 50. So the speed used to be 50, and then council, I can't remember when, did agree to lower the speed down to 40, but playground and park zone, the playgrounds are always 30, so there's 2 different speeds.
So
it
just seems to have a real concern about the speeding in Sun River.
Well, the whole argument is even when we moved it to 40, because people go 60 or 70 down the hill. So then if you have it 40, maybe they'll only go 50 to 60 instead of. But it's ongoing. People are always speeding down there.
Would we be able to request that the R.C.M.P set up a station there? We were getting the board to say what your speed was, but we don't use that. But maybe we should have enforcement there at certain times for a period of time.
She can report. Yeah, we can do that. And also, like, what's with that board?
Your Worship, what we were waiting for is the board arrived. It had to be refurbished, but what we were waiting for is the trailer for it to arrive. We have it now. It's just being put together, and then it has to be certified because it came from the States.
Oh my!
And as soon as it gets certified, we'll put the speed reader in motion, and Sun River is our first point. What we can do is it actually monitors and records speeds. So once we do that for a week or so, then we can share the information with the R.C.M.P, and they can decide what kind of enforcement and where they want to plant their patrol cars.
Yeah.
We'll keep you guys posted as we move through this process.
Okay. Councillor St. Pierre?
Can we respond to Ms. Cromwell with this information?
Yep. We'll ask, because the email is redacted, if staff could send a response back to Ms. Cromwell.
Thank you.
Please. And also maybe if you can find when the speed limit changed. I do remember voting on that and having it reduced from 50 to 40. Okay.
One more from me.
Yep.
Just on this subject. Yeah, I was hoping Staff Sergeant MacArthur might be here tonight. Thanks to him for that statistical report. He often does appear to make those presentations.
He tries to come in about quarterly if he
Quarterly,
can.
okay,
Yep.
good. Because when he is back, or maybe at a committee of the whole meeting, we can discuss speeding issues and enforcement in the district. Because Sun River Way, of course, I routinely hear about speeding on Grant Road West, Phillips, Sooke River Road, Whiffenspit, Road Night near Townsend.
Yeah, Helgeson,
everywhere.
pretty much
So
every.
These Speed Watch Sooke and the speed readers are for me, they're pretty effective.
I like the one in Langford that has the smiley.
Yeah, it's always
much
frowning.
more effective than the one we got.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is there any other correspondence, or can we move on?
It's Rick Robinson, Westwind Harbor Co-housing. That's the invitation to go for the groundbreaking.
Yep.
On January 11th. I was just wondering if you could send out an email.
Yep, I've.
Because I don't have the email address.
Okay, so this is if you want to attend?
I shall
Okay.
be attending, but there's no email to reply to it.
Okay, so if any of you know your calendar, if you can just, because I'm in touch with Mr. Robinson about this event, so just let me know, and then I can RSVP for everyone that's interested in going.
Okay, I'm interested. And then the last one that I had was that one from Karen McLeod for the feeders.
Yep.
So, and I did see the emails where they said to her that you can feed the birds, but when you listen to Wild Ark or any of the animal rehabilitators, it's not a good idea to be feeding them anyhow, because for the majority of them they die because of disease and all the bird feeders because people don't clean them out. Just saying.
Yeah. Any other correspondence? Councillor Logans?
Yes, N, the sex trafficking one.
Yep.
Another counselor from BC brought this to my attention, but when we are traveling to all our different conferences and are staying in hotels, there's actually a website where you can upload photos of your hotel room that you stay in when you travel, and then they use that in evidence cases to track sex trafficking. Because the rooms, they can match them like what they look like in those instances. So I just wanted to let you guys know that exists, and it's trafficcam.com, but traffic is spelled TRAFFICK and then CAM.com.
I don't follow.
So
we would
in
get our hotel room and they would compare it with like a video where there was some sex trafficking, and then they would match it.
Mike, but yes.
To know if there was an incident in the room that you stayed in? Is that the intent?
Yeah, so they match, as Councillor McMath said, they match what the photo of your room looks like to a photo of like a sales ad typically they would have for sex trafficking, and then that way they can narrow down where that hotel might be and help stop the trafficking.
Oh, I see.
Right, yeah. So it's just like not a lot of people get the opportunity to travel and stay in hotels, so it's just a resource that we can use to help that.
And sorry, what was the name of that website?
It's trafficcam.com, TRAFFICKCAM.com.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so we're completed with that, and verbal reports. Any verbal reports? You don't need it.
No,
that's good. Councillor Parkinson?
So I can say that a number of us attended 28th official opening of the Brooks Park Playground. And then on December 2nd, we had our Santa Parade, which was totally amazing with so many floats and great job. It was fun. December 4th was the kickoff for Festival of Trees at Sea Park, and a number of us attended that as well. And the fire department participated this year, and Ben was Santa, and he made the kids cry. And then and December 6th and 9th, I attended the Lot A charrette.
Councillor Logans?
Thanks. It's been a very busy time, but it's been great. On Giving Tuesday, there was the Makerspace grand opening, and many of council attended, and there was a lot of people there. It was wonderful. This past weekend, our staff put on a wonderful charrette for the community, and it was interesting to see how it all came together. So I went the Thursday and Saturday, and we did a walk of the lot, which was very helpful. We also got to use some moss and Play-Doh and Lego and felts and everything. Yeah, there's some moss on the floor still. A little bit of Play-Doh, too. And we got to create what might happen on the lot in small teams, and it was very interesting to see what a bunch of the groups put together because they were all very similar. So from my understanding, and I'd perhaps Ms. Campbell can correct me if I'm wrong, but there were 2 potential designs at the end? Yes, okay. Yeah, 2 potential designs. I'm sure council will see them. I haven't seen them yet. It'll be exciting too. And lots and lots and lots to consider. But it was just a really fantastic event, and I heard lots of wonderful things from the community as well. So well done to our staff and to our consultants for that.
So for the CRD, the Capital Region is starting its strategic process right now. So I was in for day 2 of that. Councillor Parkinson went to day 1 and then day 2. And then there's been an online sort of survey to fill out with priorities. And then you number them. And so sort of give me an ideas on, sort of what works and what doesn't work with strategic planning. And there'll be another follow-up in January. But meanwhile, for committee appointments, Finance and Governance, First Nations, I'll be the chair, and then Parks and Environment have been consolidated into one committee. So that'll be interesting. There's 8 committees in total. And then, and then of course, housing has been split off into its own meeting now. So Wednesday's a full day. I'll be in Victoria now starting for 10:30 or 11:30 instead of the 1:30 usual. And then at least the board is shifted up to a 1 o'clock start. The idea is it's nicer to, sometimes we go to 4:30 to 5. I always find it interesting that those of us that live the longest are the ones, like the longest distance, are still there. And everyone else is after. I'm like, how does this work? But anyway, so it'll be a busy year, this CRD. And keep Councillor Parkinson posted of dates and scheduling. So that's all underway. Anything from staff? Oh, pardon me, Councillor Bateman.
Just to, along with Councillor Beddoes and McMath, I attended a celebration party last night for the planned $1 million hatchery on the Charters River that will run by the Sooke Salmon Enhancement Society and JDF Salmon Restoration Society. This is very much a true volunteer effort, all kinds of donated labor and services. Director Hicks thanked the district specifically for our waiving of building permit fees, and he's saving the project $5,800, but more significantly, as he said, 6 months of wait time before construction could begin. So I'm not sure that was a sly little jab or not. But Premier Horgan was there, noting that the project can expect a significant contribution from the Department of Fisheries, as was promised to him on Friday by Prime Minister Trudeau. And I also was part of that Sooke charrette, and full credit to consultant Mr. Platel, Niall, who really led the planning department for being with us the whole time, and all kinds of public involvement. Shout out to firefighter Ben Temple for playing Santa. I didn't know he made kids cry, but cry with delight. And I also attended this Royal Roads University report on November 27th. This is the 5th year that Royal Roads tourism management students have studied Sooke, and this time they focused on some high-level ideas about how we can move forward. They're talking about critical importance. We all know this, critical importance of stakeholder collaboration, creation of measurables so that we know where we're going, or we can measure ourselves on the road ahead, renewable energy, promotion of eco and agritourism, and engagement in community resilience planning. And hopefully, with Britt Santowski's involvement, we can get them back for another year. And they did some really fascinating trail analysis for Colwood, and perhaps that could be a project. But they are looking for ideas from us on what we would like to see offered up. So,
Councillor St. Pierre.
I and many of the councillors actually attended the staff Christmas party, and thank you very much for the invite. It was a well-run show. Even if people, took advantage of the cheap booze, they had rides back home without, any risks. There were volunteer people to get us back and all the rest. I went back in a clown car, and that was fun too. And thank you very much.
I lost my hat too. The laughing hat still in there.
Anything else from anyone at this table, at council table? Anything from staff? Okay. So we have a notice of motion from Councillor Parkinson, and that is that the District of Sooke parking bylaw policy be brought forward to the next committee of the whole so that council may have a fulsome discussion on how to improve the situation taking place in so many of the district's subdivisions. So that's been moved by Councillor Parkinson, and you're seconding it by Councillor McMath. Any discussion? So, we'll look forward to that. Ms. Machado?
I think just from a staff perspective, we're just wondering what the issue is. It's part of the zoning bylaw. It's not a specific policy.
Parking is associated with use in the zoning bylaw, so every use has its own parking, including residential. So I'm just trying to figure out what is the problem we're trying to solve so we can kind of narrow down.
Through you, Your Worship, I will send you the pictures of what we're trying to fix.
So is it purely residential then?
Purely residential.
So I can.
It's not for parking downtown to create more parking spaces. It's a problem of how, when we're developing our subdivisions and we're not and allowing suites in every zone and not having enough parking for the people that are there, and that the neighbors are all fighting with each other, and there's not enough room for fire trucks or larger vehicles to go down the road, blocking each other's parking spaces. The one gentleman that I've got like 10 emails from cannot get into his own driveway because of the electrical trucks parked across the road from him. So it's causing a lot of dissension in the community, and it really needs to be looked at.
So could I ask council if it needs to be more specific notice of motion maybe for our suburban residential parking? Because it's really just residential parking is based on single family or multifamily, and it doesn't matter where in the district it is. So can I get a little bit more? And this is beyond just use. I mean, this is based on our road standards, widths, whether there's parking allowed on the street or not. If it's a strata road versus a fee simple public road, there's a lot. This is much bigger discussion potentially.
It is. It's a very big discussion. Pardon me?
I think that's why this committee is a whole.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we can have that discussion. So we can talk about all the issues that each of us has to bring up with it. But it is mainly why I brought it up was because of the issues within the community. And I've been out with Bylaw to look at different sites and to talk with the people. And we got to come up with some kind of plan to correct this. And whether it is going to be that when we do these subdivisions, we have to make the roads wider so that cars can park on them. If we're going to be adding suites in with every single house, you could have up to 5 cars at each place. And the whole road is completely covered with vehicles. And it appears that a lot of people drive really big vehicles, so it blocks even more of the road off. So I think that is where the discussion will lead to.
So what council needs to see then is just the table from the zoning bylaw with what the parking requirements are, and then you'll just lead the discussion from there. This isn't a full report. You're just wanting to see what's in the...
I wouldn't do a report at this stage. I would just provide the table.
The information that you have.
Anything you have like that just sort of would be like, here's what part, just provide that as a reference material. And then council can just say, look, we're hearing this or hearing that, and then what's happening, and if there's specific problem. I guess the other thing would be, if we are aware of an area where there's an issue, what tools can council do? Can we look at restricting parking on one side of the road, say, where we're starting to hear numerous complaints of, or whatever? Is that available? And, what is the up or down side to doing that? Or people that maybe don't park, seem to know how to park. They park facing the wrong way, and they are hanging out a little bit on the road. I know that's an R.C.M.P issue, but they're busy, given the stats you see, then to sit there and chase down people that are just parking whatever way they want. So I just have that, and then we can see from there what direction will come forward to staff out of it. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe we could all have a look in the next little while. I know there's this one development on Maple Street, a townhouse complex. I cannot understand how that was even put in with the terrible parking in that one. And I can get the address of it. We can discuss it. I'd be interested to see how that one moved forward, because you can't even turn around down there. Mm-hmm. I have a friend. It's up on Maple.
Just up from Buffy's on the right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's
Councillor St. Pierre.
So it sounds like we're having a fulsome discussion right now.
We're going to have this so staff can be prepared, and they have what they need for the meeting.
Could I add?
Go ahead, Ms.
Sorry. Could I ask if there are specific areas you're thinking of? It would be helpful if I had a list of those that I could then research back a little bit. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. There's no in-camera to resolve, so at this point we will adjourn the open meeting and go back. You have a notice of motion? Okay, you're supposed to give it to me, but that's okay. Yeah, I'll read it out. I can read it out. We were not here to debate it, it's just a notice. So, okay, notice of motion. And that is that staff bring forward the policy on funding from development projects in regards to affordable housing. I'll say $1,000 per house is not sufficient, but that's more of an aside. I'll just leave it on the first part, that staff bring forward the policy on funding from development projects in regards to affordable housing. So that's here for notice, and at the next regular meeting in January, then we'll actually debate that to come forward, which will then bring it forward to the meeting after that in terms of sequence. Okay?
I had a question. I thought do we have a committee of the whole next Monday night? We do. And what would the subject of that be?
Committees.
Oh, committees. Okay.
Committees and
committees, the parking, and also the
parking will come up. Okay.
Council procedure bylaw will also be
introduced in council procedure.
Bylaw. Just bringing it forward for discussion, giving you information on what we think it could look like.
Okay, so at this point we will adjourn the open meeting and reconvene the closed portion. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you.